On average, the United States has been starting wars with other nations once every 10 years since its founding. And during this time, Iran hasn't started any. Foreign interest in Iran during the modern era began in the early 1900s with the Anglo-Persian Oil Company. The British Crown became dependent upon Iranian oil, and the people of the Middle East were subjected to a century of betrayals, strategic deception, and psychological operations. In 1921, Britain overthrew the Iranian government. During World War II, both Britain and the USSR invaded Iran to steal their oil. In 1953, Britain and the USA overthrew the Iranian government. After 9/11 was carried out by the USA and Israel, Osama bin Laden and Al-Qaeda were blamed, assets of Western intelligence agencies, and the foreign Zionists then began a campaign of mass murder in the region that has so far amassed a death count in the millions. And when Zionist forces occupied Iraq, the Iranians knew they were coming for them, and so they prepared accordingly. Less than 48 hours before the United States and Israel attacked Iran on February 28th, the United States had just concluded their most productive round of nuclear negotiations in years and had agreed to meet again in 4 days. The independent mediator announced that a peace deal was within reach and said Iran had agreed it would never have enough nuclear material to create a bomb. Iran had offered full IAEA access to its nuclear sites. Iran offered to downblend its highly enriched uranium stockpiles to the lowest possible level and convert them into irreversible fuel. Technical talks were scheduled for the following Monday in Vienna, and a fourth round of political negotiations was scheduled within the week. But 48 hours later, Trump and Israel launched an attack on Iran. The initial strikes included the nation's leader and 178 Iranian schoolgirls, who were murdered by the U.S. with a double strike of Tomahawk missiles. The so-called Army, Navy, and Air Force that Trump brags about completely destroying were decoys meant to help waste U.S.-Israeli munitions. Iran has clearly been paying attention to the Zionist protocols of war and have developed a deterrent that secures their sovereignty. The real military is underground. A massive city of tunnels has been built beneath the entire country, with a stockpile of missiles to rain down daily for years. This underground city is well beyond the depth for U.S. and Israeli bunker busters, and it seems to have an endless amount of launch sites throughout the entire nation. Their weapon systems are all custom-made to defeat the Zionist war machine. Thousands of drones launched in swarms to overwhelm defense systems. Missiles with no fins upon re-entry, making it harder for radar to get a lock. Missiles that steer away from predicted flight paths to evade interceptors. Missiles that deploy several other warheads that evade interceptors. And hypersonic missiles fast enough to evade modern air defense systems. Iran is having so much success that on March 21st, they launched a single strike against Israel's nuclear facilities at Dimona and hit the target in an impressive show of force that sent a clear message. Iran can now target Israel's nukes at will. One of the most striking things about Iran's campaign has been their transparency. They have been announcing their actions and targets and following through to their word, which stands out in stark contrast to the US-Israeli method of war, deception and terror. Iran's real navy is underground as well, and designed specifically for this war. They have thousands of unmanned surface vehicles that operate as swarms and are equipped to take down any ship in the Gulf, no matter how massive. After decades of being exploited and playing nice, Iran has effectively nationalized the Strait of Hormuz, which has always been their home. Iran has been planning this since 2003. They have enough munitions for years and are continuing to produce more underground. The US and Israel, on the other hand, are already running out. Iran has made it clear they will not submit to the Zionist threat, and they will tank the world economy if they need to, which is well within their ability at any moment right now. Greg Reese reporting.
All right, you guys. Hello and welcome to the Diamond Report Live. I barely had the ability to get my camera working tonight, so it looks a little different. But anyway, hopefully it will be all right and continue functioning. If not, we can always turn it off like that. But we'll leave it on. Anyways, hello and welcome. It is Doug Diamond. You are at the Diamond Report Live. It is 9:11 p.m. on 3/29/2026. Yes, and it does appear that we are in the midst of the beginnings of what one might call World War III. And there are more and more discussions just at a serious level about this thing going nuclear. Thermonuclear. Can you believe that? And for what reason? It just makes no sense. But then again, we are living in the end times, which is what this show is all about. The Diamond Report Live, breaking news that proves we are living in the end times. So let's take a look at the news. We've got a few things to check out tonight, and I did have a special presentation thing that I wanted to leave time for tonight. Hopefully we can squeeze everything in. So we will see. We are going to address a prophecy that has only recently come to my attention. It's been around for a while. I did not know about it until really yesterday. A guy named Chris Bledsoe, and he has a book called The UFO from God, or UFO of God, or something. And so there's a prophecy associated with him, and we're going to take a look at that a little bit later tonight, but we're going to have a look at all the news items first, like we normally do, and we'll see where it goes. So anyway, hello and welcome. Yeah, let's look at HalTurnerRadioshow.com, which is where we normally start. Breaking news earlier tonight, just a little while ago, actually, desalination plant hit in Kuwait. 8:56 p.m. Eastern, reports are storming in from Kuwait saying the Iranian missiles have struck a desalination plant in Kuwait. Desalination is the process of removing salt and minerals from seawater or brackish water to produce fresh water for drinking, irrigation, and industrial use. It is a crucial growing solution to a global water scarcity. With over 16,800 plants operating worldwide, producing nearly 17 million, more than a gallon, I guess, per day. How it works: reverse osmosis, the most common modern method, using high-pressure pumps to force seawater through semi-permeable membranes that trap salt, filtering out 99% of contaminants. They probably don't add fluoride to it, I'm guessing. Anyway, here's some other benefits and potential drawbacks and challenges, but it is interesting that the Iranians are attacking that. Of course, you know, it's kind of to be expected. They have said that that's what they're going to do if the U.S. and Israel continue doing what they're doing, and they are, of course. Next report here from Hal, U.S./Israel bombing Iran power plants, which is exactly what they said they would not do. At least give them a few days or whatever, but nope. They're going ahead, apparently. A little over 2 hours ago, this is earlier today, reports started coming in saying the U.S. and or Israel had begun bombing power plants and other infrastructure inside Iran. These claims were viewed with great skepticism because Trump explicitly and publicly said he was ordering a postponement of any such infrastructure attacks for 10 days. That is until April 6th at 8 p.m. Eastern Time. Yet, here we are at 6 o'clock Eastern Time today, March 29th, and the video below came in showing Tehran without electric power. So, dark video here, I guess, of Tehran. The United States has just bombed Iran power plants, leaving hospitals and homes without electricity for millions of people. Thinking about dialysis patients, babies in NICU, and others. People will die. Innocent children will die. This is a crime against humanity. Yeah, that's what Israel and the United States apparently is really good at. And Trump seems to be even, day to day, seems to be more and more proud of that kind of stuff. So he has really hit bottom, I think, or maybe he hasn't quite hit bottom yet. I don't know. It says if we in the U.S. or in Israel did this, our president said we should wait for 10 days. No one will ever be able to trust us again. No one in the entire world. We were supposed to be the good guys. Turns out we're not, according to Hal, and he is exactly right. Yeah, I think that the world already didn't trust the United States, don't you? Which takes us to the famous meme, Hans, are we the baddies? You ever heard that or seen that clip before? You've got the SS officers, and they're addressing the question, when they finally realize that they're the bad guys. And I think that's what a lot of people are quickly realizing about the United States. We've known that about Israel for some time, but the United States and Israel are the same, one and the same, and on the same sides. So this one also from Hal's site, flash radiation detected in Israel. After an Iranian missile struck a discrete building in Israel, a large fire with a thick smoke erupted. Now authorities are reportedly detecting radioactive fallout, quote unquote. Warnings are going out over TV and radio telling local residents of a hazardous materials event and instructing them to shelter indoors with doors and windows closed and sealed. More info as I get it, Hal says. Authorities report actual radioactive fallout in the area. Residents are urged to take shelter and limit movement until further notice. Then a little bit later today, he said, I have been told that these are standard Israeli Home Front Command safety guidelines in both Hebrew and Arabic. For a hazardous materials incident, they are being broadcast on local television inside of Israel. I'm also told that Iranian missile shrapnel today hit a chemical plant in Neat Hovav, an industrial zone near Beersheba. Here's a video of the aftermath of that missile strike, which it's really short, but you can see it here. Fire rages in Beersheba, and an emergency is declared in the area. Is Iran done holding back? Yeah, really. So I guess a little more here on that story. An Israeli fire department official at the scene of the Iranian missile strike in the Ramat Hovav complex, Beersheba, says you can see a secondary explosion in the background. The complex is home to Rafael Advanced Defense Systems, Israel's government arms company responsible for the development and production of missiles and radioactive defense systems. How about that? The complex hosts 19 chemical factories, including pesticides, bromine, and pharmaceutical plants. Authorities have warned of a potential hazardous chemical leak, evacuating the surrounding area as a precaution. Yeah, you don't say. It says one chemical confirmed to be leaking is ammonia. People are being explicitly warned that it is at suffocating levels and will cause severe burns of the respiratory tracts if it is inhaled. So, man, bad news there if you are Israel. Drone intrudes on Palm Beach airspace as Air Force One takes off. A drone flew dangerously close to Palm Beach International Airport while President Trump's Air Force One was taking off, prompting an immediate ground stop and the scrambling of helicopters to investigate the airspace. According to reports and live announcements from Delta pilots on the ground, the drone came too close during the departure phase, triggering standard security protocols under the temporary flight restriction in place for the presidential movement. Helicopters were quickly dispatched for a visual sweep of the area. The ground stop lasted approximately 40 minutes before being lifted. Normal airport operations resumed. The drone's origin and operator remains unknown. FAA is investigating, so Secret Service. Yeah, and Hal says, I don't like the narrative being built right now. Yep, well, we know if there's one thing that Iran is really good at, that would be drones. And I saw this one too from his same site, HalTurnerRadioShow.com. Dutch fuel reserves down to 6%, give or take. A food crisis is in the making. Dutch gas reserves are at 6%. The Netherlands is the second largest food exporter. 80% of export vegetables come from greenhouses. Those greenhouses depend on gas. This is how an energy crisis turns into a food crisis. The Hormuz crisis is cascading through the entire global economy. Hal's remarks here says, I've been telling you, both on his website and radio show, to buy emergency food. And we won't go into that, but I'm sure many of you guys already know to get yourself stocked up as best as you can. I know people just do the best they can, and you can only afford so much, and you can only store so much. However, I just wanted to mention it, and something Hal is constantly harping on, and rightfully so. It's important. All right, we've got a few articles from needtoknow.news. Meta/Facebook and Google lose landmark case about child addiction to social media, ordered to pay $6 million. Would they even notice $6 million? I don't think they would. Not even a drop in the bucket. Los Angeles says a woman named Kaylee, identified as KGM, alleged that using YouTube and Instagram from a young age led to addictive use and contributed to her mental health problems, including depression, body dysmorphia, and suicidal thoughts. A jury found that Meta, formerly Facebook and YouTube, are liable for creating applications that led to harmful and addictive behavior by young users and failed to warn about potential for addiction. TikTok and Snapchat parent Snap were named in the original complaint but settled before the trial. So they weren't actually involved in the trial, I guess. The jury awarded $3 million in compensatory damages and $3 million in punitive damages to the lead plaintiff in the case. The case against Meta and Google proceeded as the first bellwether trial in a massive coordinated proceeding involving approximately 1,600 similar lawsuits filed by individuals, families, and school districts. So very interesting, huh? Somehow I think for them, just like Big Pharma, it's probably something they can chalk up to the cost of doing business, unfortunately. But it's good to see, though, that they're losing cases in court now, so I think that's a plus. CIA accused of poisoning the sky with toxins as files expose secret weather control agenda. We covered this last week on the Diamond Report, and of course it is Mr. Dane's main article on his site for last week, in addition to the normal Global Alert news that we produce as well. And this one, though, is kind of a further commentary on that, on the Daily Mail story that came out. Once top-secret CIA files have detailed America's plans to control the world by manipulating the weather, by launching rockets or using planes to dump chemicals into the atmosphere. I don't think there's rockets involved. Maybe I'm wrong. That alter the climate in local storm systems. Memos from 1965 under the Lyndon Baines Johnson regime noted that federal funding for this secret program was set to be 4 times higher in 1967, the same year that the U.S. began spraying toxins over Vietnam to cause floods and landslides. While giving the commencement address at Southwest Texas State University in May 1962, then Vice President Johnson said, "He who controls the weather will control the world." Yes, and a little sidebar here, we have that exact same footage, that same famous footage now, at the beginning of every Global Alert News program that we've done. We're at 555 programs now. I think it's at the beginning of all those. So we've been using it for many years. It's a really good clip, very descriptive. After LBJ became the 36th president, he went on to oversee 2 infamous projects designed to manipulate the weather, Project Storm Fury and Project Popeye, which was used to artificially extend Vietnam's monsoon season in 1967. The U.S. government has maintained that weather modification has been used only to help weaken dangerous storms and induce rain in drought-stricken areas. Yes, they've only been benevolent. They've never, ever controlled hurricanes and made it stay stationary over one area, one city, and flood out entire cities. And they've never done that. They've never created, chemical ice storms like in Nashville just, a month or 2 ago. And they've never done chemical ice nucleation to create massive snowstorms like in Boston and other places. They've never done that. They've only done positive, good things with their weather control. Yeah, right. Anyway, this has further info here from the Daily Mail article as well as Mr. Dane's article on his site. I was looking through it, though, just to see if they even mentioned Dane at all, and they don't. And I'm not actually surprised, because the guy that runs and owns this site, G. Edward Griffin, who I do actually respect, he and Mr. Dane have not really got along real well over the years, so I'm not really too surprised. There's a picture of Dane here as he was interviewed with Tucker Carlson. That's part of this this video clip, but it appears that they couldn't avoid the article about CIA poisoning the sky, so they had to report on it. But it is interesting that geoengineeringwatch.org was not even mentioned in this article, at least not from what I saw, just kind of glancing down through it. So that's interesting. It kind of says a lot from the standpoint of where they're coming from, perhaps. It does have a full article link here that's taking you to the original Daily Mail article, which then that is linked to geoengineeringwatch.org, which, full disclosure, I am the webmaster for that website, have been for many, many years, and know Dane Wigington personally, have known him and worked with him for many years. So it is interesting, though, that Jared Griffin's site here is not even recognizing that site at all, even though it is the de facto site across the world for geoengineering news. So that's really too bad. Anyway, let's keep moving here. Former CIA agent weighs in on Israel, war with Iran, Epstein, and the JFK files. Former CIA agent and whistleblower John Kiriakou claims that Jeffrey Epstein was in a homosexual relationship with Les Wexner. How about that? Yikes. And was an access agent linked to Mossad and was running a blackmail/intel network using honeypots. He details Israel's heavy influence on U.S. politics, 10,000 still hidden JFK files, pointing to Mossad motives for the assassination, and asserts Iran and no nuclear program. But Israel pushed for war, and Netanyahu allegedly threatened Trump with nukes, meaning if he doesn't move into Iran, Israel will use nukes on Iran. I think that's what that means. That's what I'd heard before. Mossad holds compromising files delivered by Epstein on the elites. So pretty interesting. And here's further video here from John Kiriakou posted here, part of that interview. So yeah, Netanyahu buffaloed Trump. As far as war in Iran goes, Kiriakou disclosed its disturbing beginning. Franzi asked him whether, that's the person conducting this interview here, I think, asked him whether Israel controlled the United States and whether the U.S. attack on Iran was really Israel's war, quote unquote. Former CIA agent who went to prison for revealing the agency's waterboarding of al-Qaeda terrorists told Franzi that every Israeli prime minister going back 4 decades had asked every U.S. president to bomb Iran, and every president, he said no until Trump. Kiriakou confirmed Rubio's claim, which Trump later denied, that the U.S. attacked Iran to protect American regional assets because Israel would attack with or without U.S. approval. Rubio didn't say that Israel planned to hit Iran with nukes. Of course, he wouldn't say that because Israel's not even supposed to have nukes, are they? But everyone knows they do. And then there's some discussion here of JFK as well and the Israelis. And it says a friend who's close to President Trump told Kiriakou that 10,000 JFK documents will never be released because every single one of them points directly at Israel. Very interesting, isn't it? Are you shocked? I didn't think so. I'm not either. Former president of the Pennsylvania Funeral Directors Association says 30 to 40% of corpses contain white fibrous clots. How do you suppose they got there? It's very interesting, isn't it? Wonder how that would happen. Since 2021, reports of unusual white fibrous clots discovered during embalming have been dismissed as anecdotal. Yeah, it doesn't matter. They're just making it up. Or attributed to fringe voices within the profession. However, senior leadership in the embalming and funeral director industry are confirming the reports. Chris Calvi Jr., the president of the Pennsylvania Funeral Directors Association, 24 to 25, recently reported that he has personally observed these white fibrous clots in an astonishing 30 to 40% of the bodies that he has embalmed over the past 5 years. So the interview here is embedded on the page. 6 years after 15 days to slow the spread, retired U.S. Air Force Major Thomas Haviland and Chris Calvi Jr., former president of the Pennsylvania Funeral Director Association, joined OAN here to discuss the rising rates of white fibrous blood clots. So yeah, 30 to 40% of people who've died. And that's probably just a guesstimate, I'm guessing. But anyway, another one on needtoknow.news. And then this one too. Criminal defense attorney explains that police can see through walls and how to stop it. I actually watched this video just to see what it was about, and it is really interesting and not something that I had heard of before. This is a different system. Here's what this says on this page. Criminal defense attorney explained that police have used technology to spy on people in violation of the Constitution. This new company called Xaver, XAVER, is a new technology that uses specialized radar signals and proprietary algorithms to penetrate building materials like concrete, wood, and brick for images of life that it has analyzed by AI. It determines from up to 100 yards away who is in the house, how many people are in the house, the proximity of each person to one another, and exactly the direction each person may be walking. The attorney explained that police have qualified immunity that protects them from being sued for damages in civil court for actions taken in their line of duty, removing consequences for breaking the law. Yeah, they were saying that this system will allow someone to see even small movements. Basically, it can operate as far as 100 yards away. It can see directly through pretty much any sort of material. It cannot penetrate metal. So if you're in a metal building, it cannot penetrate that. Even if you just have foil on your walls, it cannot penetrate that for whatever reason. However, it can see through pretty much everything else. And it says it can detect small motions. So if someone's sitting at a desk and they take their hand off their desk and put it in their pocket and get something out of their pocket and put it back on the desk, they can see that from 100 yards away. So that's how detailed this can be. So scary stuff, and apparently there's some police departments that are using this. It's called Xaver, Xaver. So that is some scary stuff, but I just wanted you to know that it was out there, and it is being put to use. All right, and then got one Liberty Beacon article tonight. FBI Director Kash Patel defends wholesale unconstitutional purchase of Americans' big tech data. Of course he does. This guy has really turned out to be quite a little loser, hasn't he? Of course, I'm being nice. So we have some quotes here from Thomas Paine and Fourth Amendment quote here from says the United States Constitution, Fourth Amendment, right of the people to be secure in their persons, houses, papers, and effects against unreasonable searches and seizures shall not be violated, and no warrants shall issue, but upon probable cause, supported by oath or affirmation, and particularly describing the place to be searched and the person or things to be seized. That's the Fourth Amendment. And it says, unfortunately, the ease with which the government now enjoys the ability to surreptitiously, without meaningful oversight or the knowledge of the mark, stock large amounts of highly personal information on American citizens, which, unlike the physical search of a residence, for example, are not easily documented by watchdogs, complicates the ability to restrain the government, which by its nature, as is the case for any human organization, as the founders warned, in constantly interested in expanding its powers and authorities. At a recent Senate hearing, FBI Director Kash Patel, in a much underreported exchange with Senator Ron Wyden, defended the agency's longstanding but previously unacknowledged practice of buying data on American citizens wholesale from big tech. The capacity to collect, which again has been greatly enhanced by the use of AI to comb through electronic communications, and will only be further enhanced with the progression of time. So here's the exchange here in the video. He says, the FBI uses all tools, Senator. Thank you for the question. To do our mission, we do purchase commercially available information that's consistent with the Constitution, yeah, right, and the laws under the Electronic Communications Privacy Act. And it has led to some valuable intelligence for us to be utilized with our private and partner sectors. I don't believe him. He's a little worm. I knew when he was being interviewed for the job way back when Trump was first elected, and he was sitting in front of Congress, and he lied on the stand that this guy was going to be trouble. And if you remember, maybe you don't, he lied specifically about being on what's his name's radio show, his podcast. And he was on that show 8 different times. And he specifically lied about not knowing who the guy was, and acted like he'd never heard of the show before. When, obviously there's a lot of video out there of him being on that show. So anyway, he lied about it. And I was wondering then what we were going to get when Kash Patel was brought in, and now we know. Now we know. Technocracy.news article. There's just one for tonight. I felt like the other two weren't really that important. So this one is, though. Is the Trump administration signaling push into humanoid robotics? Figure 003 robot was created by Figure AI, a company whose website states, move fast and be technically fearless. Hesitation is the enemy of momentum. We are tackling today's most complex technological challenges by testing, experimenting, and taking calculated risks to embrace the unknown without fear of failure. This mimics Zuckerberg's philosophy, move fast and break things. That was a little blurb there from Patrick Wood, the guy that runs this website. White House on Wednesday hosted an education summit featuring First Lady Melania walking side by side with an American-made humanoid robot. Yeah, there it is here. I don't know if you guys saw that or knew about it. The robot's placement at a White House event suggests the technology wing of the Trump administration is pivoting toward physical AI, with the next chapter increasingly centered on American-made humanoid robots, which, of course, that is exactly where Elon Musk and others want to take it. A Politico report in December revealed that the administration was preparing to go all in on accelerating humanoid robotics, with sources saying White House officials were considering an executive order sometime this year. An executive order. Melania's appearance alongside the Figure 03 robot may be the clearest signal yet that the administration is preparing to embrace robotics as the next natural progression of physical AI. Also on Wednesday, Jeffries announced publishing an insightful note titled Humanoid Robots Begin to Clock In. Given recent advancements in materials, science, battery technology, and most importantly, AI/processing, the dream of larger scale deployments is edging closer to reality, analysts wrote. While humanoid robots are now entering factory floors and, as we have pointed out, soon the battlefield, sounds like Terminator, doesn't it? Deployment of these autonomous machines in real-world commercial applications is set to ramp up this year and next. So anyway, technocracy.news is where that one is. While I'm thinking about it, next Sunday, little programming note here. Next Sunday will be the 5th, also known as Easter. And April 5th, we are doing a show on Sunday night, April the 5th. We will be at 9 p.m. Central Time, just like always. So even though it's technically a holiday here, we will still be doing a show. However, it will be a special show. And you guys may remember I have promised a really good guest will be coming to the show very, very soon. And he and I have now conversed. And I am proud to announce that Mr. Russ Tanner will be a guest on the Diamond Report next Sunday night at this time. So we will look at that a little further as we go and more throughout the week. I'll probably put out an announcement saying that he will be the guest on the show, but I look forward to chatting with Mr. Russ. It's been a while, but he is a geoengineering expert and an expert amongst many things. So look forward to that. So that will be next Sunday, Easter night, 9 p.m. Central Time will be the start time. So the Diamond Report with special guest Russ Tanner. We will not probably have time to look at the news, so I'll let you know that ahead of time. We wanted to just do a live stream together and then have Q&A. So bring questions for Russ if you want to. We will address those next Sunday night, 9 p.m. So I just wanted to point that out and look forward to chatting with Russ next week. Hopefully I'll remember to mention it again toward the end of the show. We'll see. All right, so Revolver.news article, Dr. Malone warns there's a dangerous mole working inside the CDC. Yeah, I would think there's probably more than one, wouldn't you? Could the CDC, I call it the Center for Disease Creation, be one of the most mistrusted government institutions? Sure, that's a bold statement, since so many of our institutions are wrought with fraud, but after all the lies and propaganda that went down with the COVID, the CDC took a huge hit. CDC was founded in 1946, started to control malaria during World War II, and was supposed to protect public health from infectious disease. That was the original mission. Yeah, I would say only on paper. Very straightforward, practical, and easy for ordinary people to understand and support. Those were the good old days. Now look at it. That's why for millions of Americans, the CDC isn't some trusted public health group. It now is just another bloated political institution that allowed the COVID fiasco to destroy its last bit of credibility. These were the people who lectured the country about useless masks and a sketchy vaccine. They silenced dissent like medical Gestapos, buried facts that didn't mesh with their political agenda, changed the rules as they went, and acted like anyone who asked questions was some kind of dangerous kook. They exposed themselves, and once that happened, a lot of Americans stopped seeing experts and started seeing activists in lab coats. Trust is dropping like a sack of hammers. Amen to all that, I think. Very true. And now, the highly respected Dr. Malone is adding to the CDC rubble by suggesting there's a dangerous mole working inside the CDC. If there really is a mole or saboteur operating inside the CDC, that would make sense. And further prove how this agency isn't a neutral public health institution. It's operating more like a left-wing NGO, with political players protecting themselves, the COVID narrative, and working against Trump and RFK Jr.'s Maha. Yeah, well, Trump is also working against RFK Jr.'s Maha. Dr. Malone believes the CDC is an agency that is rotted and beyond repair. Yeah, of course, here's Dr. Malone. If you guys weren't aware of him, I'm sure many of you are. Dr. Malone is revealing that Secretary Kennedy appointed someone to be operationally in charge of ACIP and several other aspects of the CDC who now appears to have been a saboteur. So anyway, we got an embedded video here. We won't watch that, but we'll link to this post. It's on revolver.news, but we'll link to this in the Substack that I send out on Tuesday. It says, what a mess. So basically, the same institutional rot that helped bulldoze the public during COVID is still being protected from the inside by bad actors. I would also add, and also Trump. Trump is just as bad of an actor at this point. These types aren't just hanging on to old lies. Malone says they're still working hard to preserve the narrative, suppress the damage, and block anyone who might finally share the truth and demand accountability. At this point, the CDC's legitimacy problem is getting bigger when it should be shrinking. Americans already watched this institution choose narrative over truth during COVID. So yes, well said, well said. Anyway, there's a little bit more here. And some videos embedded. So that is on revolver.news. Yeah, Dr. Malone. I follow him on his Substack. He does put out a lot of really good information. This is on a site called the National Interest. Drone warfare has come to the United States. An apparent drone swarm near a U.S. Air Force base unveiled numerous vulnerabilities in homeland air defense. So did you guys know about that? Amid the raging conflict in the Middle East, the astonishing events at Barksdale Air Force Base earlier this month have attracted only limited media attention. It is reported that swarms of unidentified drones repeatedly loitered over Barksdale between March 9th and 15th, drawing no publicity, known effectively response from the military or the Department of Homeland Security. Barksdale is the headquarters of the Air Force's Global Strike Command, which is responsible for the nation's nuclear intercontinental ballistic missiles and strategic bomber forces, including the B-2, B-1, and B-52 aircrafts. The base is home to the 2nd Bomb Wing B-52s and is the central hub of communications and logistical support for coordinating and directing those forces. The fact that potentially threatening drones were able to operate over such a critical complex with apparent impunity over several days, after a similar event spanning 17 days occurred more than 2 years ago at Langley Air Force Base, is astonishing. Reports indicate that Barksdale personnel were repeatedly ordered to take cover as drones roamed over buildings and aircraft. I wonder why they didn't just shoot them down. That there was no reported effective response to that incursion comes as no surprise to those who have been calling for an overhaul of how the U.S. homeland is protected. The truth is, that homeland defense today remains largely centered on deterring nuclear threats, such as ballistic missiles and bombers flying over northern polar regions and launching ordnance into North America. Decades ago, the North American Aerospace Defense Command, NORAD, and the United States Northern Command, called NORTHCOM, were organized primarily to deter a strategic attack utilizing weapons of mass destruction. Protected by the Atlantic and Pacific Oceans, the homeland was widely regarded as invulnerable to non-strategic threats, beginning first with 9/11 and now with the advent of unmanned aerial systems, UAS, including military-style drones and such long-range precision weapons as cruise, ballistic, and hypersonic missiles launched from space, air, land, sea, and subsea. That comfortable safe haven assumption no longer holds. What happened at Barksdale is not an anomaly, but a forerunner of a new era in warfare. Defense of the homeland has become and will continue to be a far more complex challenge. So there's a bit more information here on this. But yeah, I didn't even hear anything about that until I just happened to be scanning the news today and came across this. I think they were playing it down, don't you? So yes, Barksdale. All right, this website is called Task and Purpose. Pentagon looks for vendors to supply pre-made bunkers within 30 days. What do you suppose is going to happen in 30 days? The request was issued Monday for companies to submit possible delivery timelines for 3 days, 15 days, and 30 days, and include information about the highest threat level that the bunkers could withstand. Nice. Lovely, huh? The Defense Department is trying to quickly find vendors who are able to ship pre-made shelters to protect troops in the Middle East as the United States war with Iran continues. The department is looking for information from private contractors who can provide prefabricated, transportable, hardened shelter systems designed to protect personnel from blast and fragmentation threats, according to a new federal contract notice posted on Monday. March 23rd notice has a deadline of Friday and asks for companies to submit possible delivery timelines for 3, 15, and 30 days, and include information about the highest threat level that the bunkers could withstand, like blast force, fragmentation, or ballistic impact. The bunkers will be sent to the Aqaba Air Cargo Terminal at King Hussein International Airport in Jordan. Okay, so wow, they're going to ship it over there. U.S. Central Command officials declined to comment on this solicitation. So that's pretty interesting, huh? So they're going to send them to Jordan, assuming to protect American troops, but who knows? Maybe it's for the Israelis. I don't know. Anyway, since the war began, 13 U.S. service members have been killed. I think that number is considerably higher now. We're just not being told. There were some other injured soldiers real recently as well. A lot of the hardened shelters really are outdated and could be defeated if enough missiles get through the defense system. So I think this is a good move. So anyway, jpost.com, Jerusalem Post. The IRGC, so Islamic Revolutionary Guard Corps, threatens universities in the Middle East after alleged strike against Iran University. The IRGC threatens staff, students, and civilians living near universities to maintain a distance of 1 kilometer from the sites to preserve their lives. The Islamic Revolutionary Guard Corps, the IRGC, said that it will target American and Israeli universities in the Middle East as a response to a reported attack on the Iran University of Science and Technology in Tehran. The semi-official news outlet called Tasnim news agency reported on Saturday. The statement shared by Tasnim stated that the United States should be aware that all Israeli and American universities located in the West Asia region will become legitimate targets until 2 universities are struck in retaliation for the destroyed Iranian universities. Wow. The IRGC threatens staff, students, and civilians living near universities to maintain a distance of 1 kilometer from the sites to preserve their lives. Wow. So yeah, they're going to, looks like, at some point, take out 2 universities. So they're saying stay far away. unless you want to die. Yeah, so that is an article on Jerusalem Post. That's where that one is. Back to the lovely, trustworthy guy named Kash Patel. FBI confirms hackers targeted Kash Patel's personal emails. Iran-linked hacking group called Handala posted documents and photos they claimed to have been stolen from the FBI director. FBI on Friday confirmed that the hackers targeted the personal emails of Director Kash Patel. How about that? Hours after an Iranian government-linked hacking group posted documents and images online, claiming to have stolen them from Patel, from his Gmail, essentially. In a statement, FBI confirmed the agency was aware of malicious actors targeting Patel's personal email information. We have taken all necessary steps to mitigate potential risks associated with this activity. The information in question is historical in nature and involves no government information. FBI added the statement did not include details on who was behind the attack. The FBI will continue to pursue the actors responsible. They're always actors. Support victims and share actionable intelligence in defense of networks. Yeah, I'm looking to see if it mentions some of the photos. I know there were photos that were released of him, like smoking cigars and kicking back and doing stuff like that, but I don't think it was anything too crazy. Targeting in Patel's emails indicates the Iranian attackers are likely still seeking to disrupt the U.S. and its allies as the Iran war stretches into its second month. Yeah, well, I would think so, being how the U.S. and Israel have picked a fight with them. So, not that surprising. Okay, came across this one, and we mentioned El Salvador on the broadcast before. So apparently they're having quite the renaissance. It says, El Salvador is having a renaissance filled with new buildings and enchanting spaces. One of the saddest things about modern life is how nobody seems to care about beauty anymore. Look around you. Everything is ugly now. Cold glass boxes, drab concrete slabs, and those ghastly strip malls that look more like storage units. We're surrounded by modern buildings with no soul, no permanence, no meaning, and no belief that human beings should live among beautiful things. We are surrounded by structures that feel temporary, joyless, and cheap. Because that's exactly what they are. So yeah, that does make sense. The aesthetic city. Both look fine, they say. This kind of relativism is brain rot. What is in the right picture is objectively superior in every way, and will still be there after 200 years. What's in the left picture will be gone and forgotten. So that's what we're looking at here. So we have a left and a right. So this is an aesthetic city. So we have the gone and forgotten trashy look, and we have the very nice superior look here. It says these days they want everything to look ugly so you can't tell when it was built. That's a good point. Before and after. So you have the courthouse, I guess. One of those arguments modernists use against new traditional architecture is that people won't be able to know how old the buildings are. Yeah, I guess so. It's depressing. The truth is, oldness had character and soul and life. It beckons you to explore and wander or just sit and take it all in. The old had a character that today just cannot match. My evidence says, according to this person who tweeted this. So yes, plenty of character here, huh? A long time ago, people built things to honor God, to reflect order, to lift the human spirit, and to leave behind something that was deeply worthy of admiration. Beauty mattered because it said something about what people believed in, and that life had meaning and standards. The stunning Art Nouveau beauty of Julian in Paris. Since 1906, much inspired flower women in stained glass, majestic Majorelle mahogany bar, floral tiles, and breathtaking glass ceiling. So this is what we're talking about here. Look how beautiful that is. Now, most of what gets built is driven by corporations, developers, bureaucrats, and efficiency freaks whose bottom line is money, speed, and quantity. Beauty is too expensive. Some of the ugliest buildings, I guess, in the U.S. is what they're saying here. J. Edgar Hoover Building, Boston City Hall, the Verizon Building, and the Watergate Complex. All the fancy, beautiful stuff is reserved for private homes and gated compounds and luxury toys for the elites, don't you know? Well, that's what Nayib Bukele is doing in El Salvador, and it's so magical. First, he took his country back from the gangs. And this is some of the gangs here. This is some of the people that they've arrested en masse. Crime rates have plummeted. Let's see if there, you can see huge numbers of these guys with all the tattoos. Crime rates have plummeted. El Salvador has reduced its homicide rate by over 98% in the last 10 years. 98%. People say freedom and safety are opposing goals, but you cannot have freedom without a baseline level of security. Okay, and then it's getting into how it used to be a dangerous place and it no longer is. So these are just some of the buildings here, what we're talking about in El Salvador. So there's some really neat ones. So it goes on. There's quite a bit here. And other videos and stuff. So I thought that was kind of interesting just because I think it makes a good point. We're used to the convenience and the ugliness at this point. Not so much beautiful buildings. There still are some, but not nearly as many as there used to be. And it does make sense how people are starting to get into the whole, Tartaria issue, where some of those buildings that were built way back when in the 1800s and hundreds and hundreds of years even before that, people just don't understand how humans at that point could do that. And it kind of makes sense because we're used to seeing mini malls now, shopping malls and stuff, and that's it. Anyway, I thought that was kind of neat. Iran claims destruction of U.S. spy plane. An AWAC aircraft has been struck during an attack on Prince Sultan's airbase in Saudi Arabia. Key U.S. Air Force E-3 Sentry AWACS command and control aircraft has been 100% destroyed by an Iranian missile and drone strike on the Prince Sultan airbase in Saudi Arabia. The spy plane was hit along with several other U.S. jets during Friday's attack. So I think this plane was just on the ground. Up to 6 ballistic missiles and 29 UAVs, so drones, were used, leaving at least 15 U.S. troops wounded. So here's more wounded U.S. troops, including 5 in serious condition. So, and then here's what's left of the planes. And we got one more article, further information on that. This is on InfoWars. Iran destroys U.S. AWACS jet at Saudi airbase. So that's what one looks like. In a major feat that comes weeks after the White House claimed that Iran's ballistic missile capability had been functionally destroyed, Iran has laid waste to one of only 16 American E-3 Sentry airborne warning and control systems, AWACS, aircraft in the world, sending $500 million worth of technology up in smoke and crimping the U.S. military's ability to maintain situational awareness. The same attack also damaged several aerial refueling tankers and added a dozen service members to the tally of more than 300 who've been wounded. In recent days, foreign satellite images showed what appeared to be major damage at Prince Sultan Air Base, which is a U.S. military base located in Saudi Arabia. Images show damage on the base's main apron, which holds high-value aircraft. Yeah, you can see the airplane here. So, yeah, it was just sitting on the ground, of course, but man, totally destroyed. A little more than damaged. So there you go. Probably not hearing about that too much on Fox News. White House renamed Epstein Island on Google phones, according to Washington Post. So how about that? A tech giant has blamed the incident on a fake edit on its mapping platform. The White House was briefly renamed Epstein Island for some Google Pixel phone users, the Washington Post has reported. The term is used to refer to the Caribbean island of Little St. James, which has been owned by convicted pedophile Jeffrey Epstein. According to the prosecutors, it served as the venue for sex trafficking and other abuses involving some high-profile figures in business and politics. WAPO, Washington Post, said in an article on Saturday that when its journalists tried calling the White House switchboard earlier this week, the name on the screen indicated that they were contacting Epstein Island. That is funny. So somebody has a sense of humor out there. So yes, the White House, also known as Epstein Island. Well, it certainly was when Bill Clinton was in there. We know that. And this one, I think, is a further demonstration of our illustrious president. Trump's signature to appear on U.S. dollar bills. What? Critics say the move politicizes currency and risks blurring the line between national symbols and personal branding. Trump's signature is set to appear on U.S. paper currency starting this summer, the Treasury Department said on Thursday. It will mark the first time a sitting U.S. president and his signature has appeared on legal tender. The Treasury said the redesign is intended to mark America's upcoming 250th anniversary. Trump's signature is expected to replace that of the U.S. Treasurer, altering a long-standing convention, while the Treasury Secretary's signature will remain and no new imagery will be added. Treasury Secretary Scott Bessent said the move is appropriate for the semi-quincentennial, 250, calling it a way to recognize the achievements of both the country and President Trump. Yes, all of his achievements thus far. He said that the first $100 bills bearing Trump's signature alongside his own will be printed in June, with other denominations to follow in subsequent months. So there you go. I was going to say, if they're going to only put him on $100 bills, I will never see one. I'm just joking. But, it's interesting. Somewhere I saw where that hasn't happened since the 1800s, where a president was putting his signature on U.S. currency. Of course, it's Federal Reserve notes, as we know, but, it is kind of interesting. Okay, and then this one just further proves where we are as a society, I think. Just as an example, U.S. warns travelers that Hong Kong could demand passwords. A change to Hong Kong's national security law this week criminalizes any refusal to give police passwords to laptops, phones, or other personal devices. The U.S. consulate in Hong Kong warned on Thursday the change applies to both locals and U.S. citizens, even if they're only passing through the Hong Kong airport, according to the consulate's warning. I have been to the Hong Kong airport, and the first thing that they promptly did was lost my luggage. Yes, anyway, they're really good at that. The security law also now gives local officials more power to seize devices they claim are linked to national security offenses. The U.S. consulate said Americans traveling or living abroad should sign up to receive alerts from U.S. embassies and consulates and should contact the Hong Kong consulate if arrested or detained. Yeah, how can you if they take your phone? Since November 2024, the State Department has urged travelers to be more cautious in Hong Kong and mainland China. Authorities there are known to arbitrarily enforce vaguely defined offenses under security law. But yeah, I mean, they are part of China now, so I guess it does sort of make sense. But the point is, you may see other cities, other places doing this before long too. It's hard to say. Giving up your passwords. So, of course, this is a little quiz for you. What would be the first thing you would do if you had to give your password up, traveling somewhere like that? What would be the first thing you would do when you, yeah, Matt says, I won't be going to Hong Kong anytime soon. Well, the point is, they're doing it now, but others may do that. And so if you're forced to give them your password, the very first thing you should do upon getting your device back and getting out of that checkpoint is to change your password. That's what I was getting at. But, yeah. they're going to say, passwords are compromised, and before long we have to go to the mark. You have to take the mark so we can access everything. All right, let's see here. Headline USA articles. So in the States here, we had the No Kings protests yesterday. I saw some myself, actually, out driving around just in a small town area. Probably where I was, just in a small town in Tennessee, driving around yesterday. Probably 150 people out demonstrating. No Kings protesters. People protesting Trump, essentially, is what that is. Which I don't like him, but I mean, not anymore. Being how he's lying left and right and getting us in wars that we have no business to be involved in. But, a lot of these people are serious TDS type of people who are Trump derangement syndrome sufferers. And we'll see that here on this article. Dozens of unruly No Kings protesters arrested after officers hit by bricks. I didn't see any of that yesterday, I must admit. Authorities in L.A. deployed tear gas near a federal detention center and made dozens of arrests after officers were hit by bricks at a No Kings rally, which was organized to protest Donald Trump's actions in the war in Iran. Los Angeles police said Sunday that 74 people were arrested for failing to heed a dispersal order that was given after Sunday's rally ended. One other person was taken into custody on suspicion of possessing a weapon that police described as a dagger. The arrests stood out from what was otherwise mostly peaceful protests. So there was only some burning and looting, apparently. Mostly peaceful. Organizers said there were more than 3,100 events registered in all 50 U.S. states. Yeah, there were a lot. And here, look, even the furries in L.A. got into the protesting. Apparently had nothing better to do. As hundreds of protesters surrounded a federal complex in downtown L.A., some threw rocks, bottles, and broke concrete blocks at officers. 2 officers were struck by concrete blocks, sustained undetermined injuries, and received medical attention. Yeah, they take these pieces of concrete and break them up and then throw the concrete chunks at the officers. They were doing that in L.A. Back when all of the heavy protesting was going on months ago. Nationwide, people rallied from New York with almost 8.5 million residents in a solidly blue state to Driggs, a town of fewer than 2,000 people in eastern Idaho, a state Trump carried with 66% of the vote in 2024. 66. In Minnesota, a flagship event in the Capitol lawn in St. Paul drew Bruce Springsteen as its headliner. Oh, BS. You got Bruce Springsteen, you got Barbra Streisand, and now you have Ben Shapiro. So lots of BS around. To celebrate resistance to Trump's aggressive immigration enforcement. Says U.S. organizers have estimated that the first 2 rounds of No Kings rallies drew more than 5 million people in June and 7 million in October. And they're estimating at least 8 million yesterday. I don't know. I'm not sure if they'll never know. Whatever number that they give it, it's always going to be really high. But yeah, No Kings protests. How about were there anywhere you are? Because it's interesting. They even had No Kings protests in the United Kingdom, which, of course, they have a king. His name is Charles. But I guess he doesn't count. NVIDIA CEO Jensen Huang, artificial general intelligence has been achieved. They've been saying this for a long time. So this is a recent article, though, dated today. NVIDIA CEO, or as Trump pronounces it, NVIDIA CEO Jensen Huang is stirring debate across the tech and investment world after declaring that artificial general intelligence, AGI, has effectively already been achieved. If true, the news would mark a major breakthrough in the next generation of AI technology. However, critics say his definition falls short of what the industry has long considered true AGI. Jensen Huang made the comments during an appearance on Lex Friedman's podcast. He suggested that AI systems are now capable of building billion-dollar businesses under the right conditions. Yeah, you probably have to start with the $1 billion. Jensen Huang says, quote, I think we've achieved AGI. Pressed on how long it would take for AI to independently innovate, find customers, and run a company valued at $1 billion, he offered a striking response. He just said, I think we've achieved AGI. Sounds like a robot. He argued that AI models could already create viral digital products capable of generating massive short-term revenue, even if those ventures are not sustainable. It is not out of the question that Claude was able to create web services that all of a sudden, a few billion people used for 50 cents, and then it went out of business again shortly thereafter, Jensen Huang said. So anyway, this is the interview here with Lex Friedman, I guess. It says, traditionally, AGI has been understood as AI that matches or exceeds human-level reasoning across a wide range of tasks. So that is officially AGI, that definition. It matches or exceeds human-level reasoning across a wide range of tasks. Huang, however, appears to define it through a business lens, whether AI can generate large-scale economic output. The distinction is critical. Critics argue that creating a short-lived viral app is a narrow achievement, not evidence of the kind of general intelligence the term AGI has historically implied. So it sounds to me like it's not really the case. He's just sort of bending the definition of it a little bit to sell more chipsets, to sell more video boards and stuff. Sounds like. State advances plan to begin using dead people for human composting in the food supply. Doesn't that sound yummy? I'm looking at the comments here. How did I not know till now that Shapiro's initials were BS? I know, Ben Shapiro. Now you know. Yes. Yeah, he's BS too, just like Bruce Springsteen and Barbra Streisand and so many others. Oklahoma lawmakers are advancing a chilling plan to begin using decomposed human remains as soil fertilizer to grow food for public consumption. Actually, this is something that I've heard about through Mike Adams. He's been talking about this for a long time. So this is on Slate News, though. This is a different outlet, but you get the idea. Despite a widespread backlash, the state is pushing forward with controversial legislation to legalize, quote, human composting. The move is igniting outrage from conservatives who warn that the state is adopting policies long associated with radical blue state agendas. Yeah. Oklahoma State House passed HB 3660 in a 59-37 vote, advancing a measure that would classify natural organic reduction, NOR. They always have some acronym. NOR. Commonly referred to as human composting, as a form of cremation under state law. So you can, I guess when you die, you could become dirt, like compost, instead of just being buried or whatever. State Rep Jim Shaw, Republican from Oklahoma, blasted the bill, warning it represents a fundamental departure from conservative principles. Today, the House advanced HB 3660, a bill to legalize the use of composted human bodies as fertilizer. If this bill is put into law, Oklahoma joins 14 blue states that have legalized this process. So instead of outlawing this type of practice outright, we're on track to take the use of humanure as fertilizer, another disgusting step forward. The bill is sponsored by State Rep Eddie Dempsey, Republican, Oklahoma, and State Senator Casey Murdoch, Republican, Oklahoma, both representing rural districts. Despite Oklahoma's Republican supermajority, the legislation passed with support from 43 GOP lawmakers. 36 Republicans and 1 Democrat voted against it. Oklahoma House Speaker, Republican Kyle Hilbert, also backed the measure. They had a heated exchange on the House floor. Shaw confronted Dempsey directly before the vote, pressing him on whether human remains should be used as fertilizer. I just got to ask, do you really believe that human remains, or even my favorite subject, human poop, are okay as compost or fertilizer? He asked. Do you really believe that? In this situation, yes, Dempsey replied. So there you go. We are compost, apparently. But, it just shows the degradation of the, of humanity. Just how, humans used to be looked at as, made in the image of God, and now we're to be composted after we pass. Yeah, jabbed humans in the soil doesn't sound very fertile. Yeah, that's right, Matt says. Using people as compost is absolutely end of the world news. Isn't that what colonies did in Waterworld? Yikes. Yeah, I think you're right. I only saw that movie one time. You probably know why. It's probably because it was bad. But, yeah, I think that was the case. Yep, there have been all kinds of movies about stuff like that. Anyway, yep. Human composting. Lovely. All right, we got a couple of articles from Gateway Pundit, so let's look at that one. Breaking second plane grounded, isolated, and declared a potential hijacking incident in Atlanta. So this happened, I think I mentioned this a couple weeks ago, when a Nashville plane was, it took off from Nashville, it was going to Fort Lauderdale, and mid-flight there was a guy walking up and down the aisle there, the main aisle in the plane, screaming Allah Akbar, and they had to take him down. He said he was going to blow up the plane. Well, they had to take him down and hold him down, and then they landed in Atlanta. So I'm not sure if this is part 2 of that, or let's take a look. Just hours after an American Airlines flight was diverted to Detroit with a disruptive passenger prompting an FBI response, a second U.S. commercial flight declared a potential hijacking incident upon landing in Atlanta on Sunday evening. Frontier Airlines Flight 2539, an Airbus 320 flying from Columbus, Ohio to Atlanta, landed at Hartsfield-Jackson Atlanta Airport around 5:09 p.m. Passengers were forced to deplane on the tarmac they are currently searching the plane in all bags. So this is people videoing, I guess, as they're doing the search. Shortly after touchdown, the crew declared a potential hijacking and security concern. So it sounds like something very similar to what I already mentioned. The aircraft was immediately directed to isolation away from normal airport traffic and followed by emergency vehicles to an inactive runway. So they must have thought there was a bomb on board or something. Video and tracking data show the plane remained isolated on the remote runway for nearly 2 hours as law enforcement and airport personnel responded. According to the crew audio from the incident, a black male passenger seated in 3A allegedly threatened to kill the passenger next to him and claimed there was a bomb on board. Okay. So this is a little different. The crew treated this situation as a potential hijacking threat. Passengers were eventually deplaned and bused to the terminal. And then they had that scare, a couple weeks ago too in Kansas City at the airport where they had to clear out the entire airport. Note that all of this kind of stuff has kicked back up again after we invaded or attacked Iran. Soon to be an invasion too, I'm sure. All right, and then this one too. FBI agents swarm isolated American Airlines jet at Detroit Metro Airport after disruptive customer forces diversion of New York City to Chicago flight. So this sounds like a different one. American Airlines flight from New York to Chicago was diverted Sunday morning to Detroit Metro after a reported disturbance involving a disruptive passenger. Yeah, this is a different one. Upon landing, the plane was immediately isolated on a remote section of the tarmac and surrounded by emergency vehicles. Yeah. In a statement released shortly after the diversion, FBI Detroit spokesperson said, I can confirm that the personnel from the FBI in Michigan are present at the Detroit airport located in Romulus, Michigan, conducting law enforcement activities. There is no current threat to the public at this time. American Airlines issued a statement confirming the reason for the diversion. I'm looking to see if this was a bomb threat too. Disruptive customer. Aircraft landed safely. Disruptive passenger was removed from the aircraft. Yeah, so this was a different one. So again, this is like 2 in one day here. So if you're flying much or at all, just be aware. There's craziness going on. I've got family members who fly almost literally every single week. So we like to try and stay abreast of this kind of stuff. And also, if you happen to be buying Barbie dolls, maybe think twice. Fentanyl and cocaine found hidden in Barbie doll boxes at a discount store in Missouri. At Cargo Largo. Fentanyl and cocaine were found hidden inside the packaging of several Barbie dolls sold at Cargo Largo, a popular discount and resale store in Independence, Missouri, just outside Kansas City. Well, I'm here to tell you, Independence isn't all bad. You know why? Because Independence, Missouri is where I was born. It's where I was born. But not at Cargo Largo. Security at Cargo Largo contacted the Independence Police Department on Saturday after noticing that a suspicious powder had been taped inside the back of one of the Barbie dolls' cardboard packaging. Field tests indicated the presence of fentanyl. Wow. It's a good thing. It's a good thing some little girl didn't get a hold of this and instantly die. Officers immediately launched an investigation with the store to determine how many packages contained the drugs had been sold. Law enforcement confirmed that five Barbie doll packages from the same shipment sold between March 19th and 20th contained the substance. Wow. Working with the staff of Cargo Largo, I've never said the words Cargo Largo so many times as tonight. And using store records and customer outreach, police located and recovered all 5 packages within hours. How did they not get opened up, though? I don't get that. No injuries or exposures were reported, and the dolls themselves were not contaminated. Well, that's luckily a good thing. Subsequent laboratory testing found that the substance was primarily cocaine with trace amounts of fentanyl. So, wow. Even Barbie dolls are vulnerable to overdosing in cocaine and drug use. Isn't that crazy? What is the world coming to? Can't even buy a clean Barbie doll these days. So sad. All right. Wine Press Substack. I like this picture of Trump because his umbrella's inverted. It's like inside out. MAGA is dead. Republicans at CPAC cheer for Trump's impeachment. Yeah, that was pretty funny. That was an oops moment for sure. A lot of people I know who just voted for Trump because they thought it was cool are just now being like, I can't stand the guy, said a Gen Z voter. Well, I'll give him props on 2 things. Apparently, he's closed the border. I think that's good news. And he did free the J6ers, but beyond that, it's just been downhill since then. Frustration and a deep sense of utter betrayal, I think that's a good word, has been ongoing since Donald J. Trump became president again a second time in January 2025, and it now appears many more Republicans and conservatives that supported the Make America Great Again, MAGA, movement are simply over it and done, especially Gen Z, of which I am not Gen Z, but yeah. This week, the annual Conservative Political Action Conference, CPAC, in Dallas, came to a close, and it looks to have been a flop. Unlike past events, Donald Trump was not there, nor was VP Vance or others in his administration, which perhaps is what led to a lesser turnout than usual. Yeah, it was pretty empty. Here's a snapshot there of all the empty seats. So here's the stage way up here, and there's just like, a smattering of people in the first 10 rows or less. And then, the state of the GOYP, GOYP. This guy's asleep. But probably the most concerning sign is that the MAGA base is fractured. It was when Matt Schlapp, what a name, Matt Schlapp, chairman of the American Conservative Union, was shocked when he asked the crowd this is the quote, how many of you would like to see impeachment hearings? And the crowd cheered. Stunned and disappointed, Schlapp replied, no, that was the wrong answer, and then said again, let's try that again. How many of you would like to see impeachment hearings? To which the audience cheered again. And here's the video clip. I don't have it patched in, but I did see it. What has become apparent is that Trump and the GOP have lost the youth vote, among Gen Z and millennials. Yep, that is true. I think the more they continue supporting Israel and these never-ending wars, of which Gen Z people would be the first ones to be drafted, I think they're not going to be supporting you as a president, Mr. Trump. Anyway, I know it's not really new news, but I just wanted to point that out. Yeah, the whole CPAC thing was kind of a flop. Will President Trump send U.S. troops on a suicide mission to take control of the Strait of Hormuz? Military experts draw comparisons to disastrous World War I Battle of Gallipoli. The Gallipoli campaign. President Trump is massing American troops in the Middle East while talking about a peace deal with the country Iran, whose leaders deny that they are in any such talks and want no part of Trump's deals. I tend to believe the Iranians, don't you? Because Trump has been lying over and over again. Elements from the 82nd Airborne Division headquarters and a brigade combat team will deploy to the Middle East, the Pentagon confirmed in a statement Wednesday. We can confirm elements of the 82nd Airborne, some division enablers, and the 1st BCT will be deploying to the CENTCOM AOR, Defense Department spokesperson said. Military analysts estimate that a combined 10,000 and 50,000 U.S. troops consisting of Marines and Army units are on the way, the first installment of which is due to arrive in the region this weekend. I'm looking to see what they're saying about Gallipoli. I'm no military expert, but I'm not sure how it behooves the U.S. operation to announce such troop deployment ahead of time, giving the Iranians time to prepare even more than they already are. It's especially true if you're sending only 10 to 50,000 troops into a country like Iran that has 1 million men in uniform, including 150,000 highly trained elite members of the IRGC, Iranian Republican Guard Corps. Yeah, it's a suicide mission is what it is. Let's hope he's smart enough to say no on this, but again, the real president is Bibi Netanyahu, not Donald Trump. Old and stoned, ? You're still good enough for drone fodder. Meanwhile, multiple news agencies are reporting that the U.S. Army has raised the maximum enlistment age to 42 years old and scrapped a barrier for potential recruits who have a legal conviction for marijuana and possession of drug paraphernalia. So the druggies get to go first. Old people and stoned people, or maybe if you're a combination of both, up to 42 years old, you can still get drafted. Isn't that nice? It says Cartwright writes of the World War I battle that took place in 1915. So if you don't know about Gallipoli, here's what this says. This major expedition involved British, French, Australian, and New Zealand troops and was launched to break through the Dardanelles into the Black Sea, thereby providing a new supply route to Russia. The Ottoman defenses remained robust, and an 8-month-long trench battle of attrition ultimately ended in an Allied withdrawal. Infamous as a costly failure, the campaign resulted in 250,000 Allied casualties. 250,000. And its staunchest promoter, Winston Churchill, was sacked from his role in the British Admiralty. So yeah, we could be looking at another situation like that. For more insights into this fascinating historical analysis that someone in Trump's inner circle is surely aware of, fast forward to the 44:38 mark in this Douglas McGregor video with his interview here with Lieutenant Colonel Daniel Davis. So they must go through that and compare what potentially could be happening to the whole World War I Gallipoli campaign. Anyway, pretty wild. That's on leohoman.substack.com. And so is this one. Ancient Christian communities being forcefully uprooted from their homes in Israel's West Bank. These Christian communities have coexisted in the Holy Land for 2,000 years. Now their very existence is threatened. Yeah, I saw an interview with a guy named Jason Jones who's working with these folks, and he's a really good person to follow on X. Jason Jones of the Vulnerable People Project is what it's called. I was looking to see if he's mentioned here in this article, and I don't see that, but he definitely addresses some of these same issues. EWTN News has a disturbing and sobering story out of Israel this week that should have Western Christians concerned. According to the outlet, the Latin parish priest of the last entirely Christian village in the West Bank has appealed for the solidarity of Christians worldwide in the face of new attacks by fanatical Israeli settlers, quote unquote, seeking to displace the local population. These Christians have, over the years, found themselves in the awkward position of being between two warring factions, Muslims on one side and Jews on the other, each consumed by hatred for the other. Neither side, in this ancient tribal blood feud, has any popular concern for the Christians, who are often caught in the middle and seen as expendable. Yeah, and Jason Jones, who I watched the interview about this, was talking about how Israelis will routinely go in and rape these people, these Christians, and they're never held accountable. So sad. So sadly, most of the Christians who live comfortably in the West remain silent about the persecution of these ancient Christian communities in the Holy Land. If it were the Muslims attacking, they would be all over it. But because these attacks are being carried out by the Jewish settlers, they don't want to hear about it, much less speak about it. That's very true. That's what Mr. Jones was saying too. My conscience won't let me join the ranks of the silent, just like I had to speak out and write an article last year about the U.S.-backed Ukrainian government shutting down Orthodox Christian churches and arresting priests just because they have loose ties to the Russian Orthodox Church. I have to call out this evil by ongoing in Israel. This is, again, this is Leo Hohmann's words here. It seems that in every country where the U.S. has been involved in a war or revolution, it's the Christians who suffer the most. It's time we start to ask ourselves an uncomfortable question: is the pattern purely coincidental or part of the plan? If this has concerned you, please pray for the protection of these Christian communities and share this article far and wide. Yeah, again, this is on Leo Hohmann's Substack. Anyway, very sad. But yeah, for sure keep praying for them. And yeah, I think it's just one of those stories that people aren't talking about at all. Because again, the Israelis are the main ones to blame here, and the evangelical Christian community doesn't want to blame the Israelis. It's okay when they do it. Not if the Muslims do it, but if the Israelis do it, it's fine. It's fine. Yeah. That's what it seems like. All right, and then this one, another Substack post here, one more from some of the routine, regular places that I frequent. Insight to Insight. Why Christianity has always been an aggressively anti-Zionist religion. There's not the slightest hint of a Zionist theme in the New Testament. Everywhere you look in the Bible, you see Zionism held to exclusively by unbelievers and rejected by Spirit-filled Christians. The Messiah they rejected, why Christianity is anti-Zionist, is what this graphic says. What if I told you that Christianity is not merely incompatible with Zionism, but was designed from the ground up to be its antidote? That the Jews rejected Jesus for precisely the same reasons American evangelicals now celebrate Israel, and that the first Christians proved where they stood on the question, not with a theological treatise, but by packing their bags and walking out of Jerusalem while everyone else was dying for it. Netanyahu stood before the international press last week and handed every thinking Christian a gift wrapped in accidental honesty. The Prime Minister of Israel declared that history proves Jesus Christ has no advantage over Genghis Khan, because if you are strong enough, ruthless enough, powerful enough, evil will overcome good. That was a quote. Yeah, we mentioned that last week. Bird-brained Christian Zionist influencers rushed to tell us that he didn't insult Jesus because he was quoting someone else or because his point was accurate. Both are true observations, because Netanyahu was indeed quoting someone else, and his overall point was, in fact, true, but neither truth meant it wasn't insulting to use Jesus as the example of a weakling who went to the cross in defeat. That should rightly have any believer not playing Netanyahu's public relations specialist up in arms. Yeah, no kidding. Netanyahu was also, without realizing it, confessing the entire Zionist worldview in a single sentence. He was telling us exactly what the Jewish leadership has always thought the Messiah should be, which is a Genghis Khan figure who is ruthless and powerful enough to crush their enemies and restore the national glory of Israel. And that's exactly why they crucified Jesus. He didn't fit their Zionist expectations. That brings me to the point of this article. Christianity is not merely theologically incompatible with Zionism. Christianity is, from its root to its crown, an anti-Zionist religion. Yeah, I would say if you're doing it right, perhaps. So, anyway, there's more here. Good article. Insight to Insight on Substack. You know, people keep bringing up why all this talk about Israel? Why is Israel so front and center in everything that's happening in America these days? Why? And I would come back to the fact that we are living in the end times. People don't realize we're living in the end times. And part of that switch is when you're in the end times, when we've moved into that place, God is changing his focus back to Israel. But not the little country in the Middle East. That's what we perceive. But instead, the believers in Jesus Christ. That's the true Israel. So that switch is underway now. That's why I think, at least in my opinion, that's why Israel is so front and center in everything going on these days. Because people are mistaking the true believers in God and in Jesus Christ. They're mistaking them for the people that run Israel, for Israel in general. That's what I've noticed. All right, now let's look at this one. This one I thought was, again, breaking news that proves we're living in the end times. I think this is a good example of that. So, see a side-by-side picture here. This one says, a drunk Kentucky student who yelled the no-no word, you know what that word is, right? Starts with an N. Who yelled a no-no word was denied early release from jail. Keep in mind, she's in jail for saying a word, something that should never happen in a country that has free speech. Same state, a person she would probably call that word, right here, is released early despite butchering a child while he slept in his room at night. So it's okay when he does it, but she can't use that word. Ex-Kentucky student sent to jail for shouting the N-word is denied early release, and yet, just a few weeks difference here, a couple months difference, I suppose. Family furious as Kentucky child killer freed 9 years early for, quote, good behavior. Meanwhile, he butchered this little kid while he slept in his room at night. So he gets out for good behavior. She can't say the N-word. She's in jail. He's free. He murdered this little guy. Breaking news that proves we are living in the end times. Everything is upside down. Man. Just outrageous is what that is. All right. So speaking of Judaism, edited anti-Semitic photo targeting sheriff leads to arrest. Bouchard warns of rising anti-Semitism. Maybe Bouchard. So this is the meme here. So this guy is a police officer, well, a sheriff. Yeah, Oakland County Sheriff Mike Bouchard, who is not Jewish, said Thursday that a suspect has been arrested in Wisconsin in connection with threats directed at him, as he warned that anti-Semitism is being increasingly normalized. So he was arrested for creating this meme. That's all the guy did. He created a photo with him with the tiny hat, the Star of David on his forehead, and the long hair. You know, the curls. Well, I don't know what that's called. But speaking at a press conference providing an update on the investigation into the March 12 attack at a temple, Israel, in West Bloomfield, Bouchard said he received a threatening image that included his photograph. This is the threatening image. Included his photograph wearing a yarmulke along with Jewish symbols such as payas, the side locks, that's what they're called, and a Star of David. He said that the image was intended to threaten and intimidate him. No, I think it was probably just to make fun of him, don't you? Just a guess. If someone, this is his quote, this is what the sheriff said, this guy. If someone feels emboldened enough to do this, what does that say about what they might do to others? Bouchard said. We have to stand up and say, this is unacceptable. No, it just means he's making fun of you. It doesn't mean he's going to commit any violence. That's what I would say to that. The sheriff said, the attack on Temple Israel, in which security guard was injured after being struck by a vehicle, underscores the danger of unchecked anti-Semitism. No, that would be called radical Islam. Temple Israel Rabbi Josh Bennett said the injured guard, Danny Phillips, has since been released from the hospital and is recovering at home. Bouchard urged community members to speak out against anti-Semitism and said failing to do so allows such behavior to escalate. Yeah, meanwhile, they arrested the guy who did this meme in Wisconsin. So you can't make fun of the sheriff. You know who your owners are when you can't make fun of them. Isn't that true? CNBC article, Walmart digital price labels are coming to every store shelf in the U.S. by the end of this year. Yeah, digital, there it is right there. Digital pricing. So this is, if you're in the store shopping, it'll look like that. You know why they do that, don't you? It's so they can update the price of things on the fly. So here's what this says. Walmart is rolling out digital shelf labels and expects the technology to be in all U.S. stores by the end of the year. Kroger has also begun experimenting with this technology. The nation's largest retailer says the digital price tags help associates do their jobs better and stresses that prices on items will be exactly the same for every consumer in every store. Yeah, because the rumors are already starting to fly that was not the case. That if you're in one part of the city, it might be more expensive than certain products in another part of the city. Some legislators are wary of the technology's potential to be used in dynamic pricing models that disadvantage consumers, says with Senators Jeff Merkley of Oregon and Ben Lujan of New Mexico introducing a bill to ban it. I don't think that's going to happen. It is Walmart we're talking about here. As the technological and digital landscape has transformed American retail, there have been some areas of life that have remained unchanged. The grocery store aisle, for instance, looks largely the same as it did 50 years ago. Sure, price stickers on the products have been replaced by barcodes, but otherwise the aisle looks largely the same. But the biggest change since the barcode is hitting in the shelf space that matters most to the pocketbook. Walmart is currently rolling out digital price tags to replace the old paper ones. The plan is to roll them out in stores across the U.S. by the end of the year. Walmart isn't alone. Grocery store giant Kroger has also begun experimenting with the technology. The speed of digital tags offers stores the promise of extra efficiency in an age of supply chain shocks and sticky inflation, but it's also drawing some concerns from lawmakers about surge pricing. Yeah. See, because they can just update with a couple of keystrokes, they can just update things instantly, on the shelf. It doesn't take them any time at all to do it. So, digital price labels coming soon to wherever you guys are. So, just watch out for that one. Army ups the max enlistment age to 42. So this kind of tells me that they are getting ready to do some sort of draft if they're bothering to do this first. It says those in their late 30s and early 40s can now join the U.S. Army. Army increased its maximum enlistment age to 42 this month, bringing its accession policy closer in line with most of the United States' other military services, according to updated service regulation documents published this month. Individuals up to 42 with or without prior military service can enlist in the regular Army, the Army National Guard, and the Army Reserve, according to the updated Army Regulation 601-210 published on March 20th. Yeah. The Army in recent years had capped the enlistment age at 35, although it did accept some older recruits with waivers. The policy did not change the Army's minimum ages for enlisting, which remains 17 with parental permission or 18. So get ready. So enlistment age 42, which got me thinking. We were talking earlier about BS, and we've already mentioned his name. Ben Shapiro is 42, so he can enlist, and he should. He can put on his tiny hat and give him a gun and send him over there. Let's see what happens. But he just happens to be 42. Maybe they did it specifically to bring him in. They know how fierce he will be fighting. Yeah. Okay, this is a weird one. Tennessee grandmother wrongly jailed for 6 months. Latest victim of an AI-driven misidentification. Facial recognition is jailing the wrong people, but police keep using it anyway. Angela Lipps, Lipps, spent nearly 6 months behind bars after AI software misidentified her. She is at least the 9th American that it's happened to. Tennessee grandmother spent nearly 6 months in jail after police in Fargo, North Dakota, used facial recognition software to identify her as the primary suspect in a bank fraud case. The problem was that Angela Lipps, 50, wow, she looks way older than 50, had never been to North Dakota, and the bank records confirmed she was more than 1,200 miles away at the time of the alleged crimes. Her case is the latest in a documented pattern of wrongful arrests being driven by facial recognition technology deployed without adequate investigative follow-up. So they just say, you're guilty and we're going to arrest you, apparently. Fargo police were investigating a series of bank fraud incidents in April and May last year, in which a woman used a fake U.S. Army ID to withdraw tens of thousands of dollars. Detectives ran surveillance footage through facial recognition software, which returned a match to Ms. Lipps. A detective then compared her Tennessee driver's license and social media images to the suspect and concluded that she was the perpetrator based on facial features, body type, and hair. Nobody from the department contacted Lipps before U.S. Marshals arrested her at gunpoint on July 14th while she was babysitting 4 kids. Breaking news that proves we are living in the end times. Lipps sat in a Tennessee county jail for 108 days before North Dakota officers collected her. Her attorney, Jay Greenwood, immediately requested her bank records, and when Fargo police finally met with Greenwood and Lipps on December 19th, 5 months after her arrest, the records showed she had been buying cigarettes and depositing Social Security checks in Tennessee at the time police placed her in Fargo, North Dakota. The case was dismissed on Christmas Eve, but the damage had already been done. She had no money, no coat, no way home, and subsequently lost her house, her car, and her dog, all because of this misidentification. Says it's not unusual. Shockingly, this is just the latest in a series of structural failures that have led to innocent people being persecuted for crimes that they didn't commit. A January 25 WAPO investigation, January 2025, so a year ago, documented at least 8 instances of Americans wrongfully arrested after police found a possible facial recognition technology match, FRT match. And in FRT, that's interesting. And in every case, investigators skipped fundamental steps like checking alibis and comparing physical descriptions that would have cleared the suspect before arrest. No, they just go arrest them first. So there's more stories here on who these other people are. Isn't that insane? Facial recognition and social media pictures, and therefore she's guilty because she looks just like the perpetrator, or at least like the ID of the perpetrator that was being used. That is some crazy stuff. So this is very concerning. If you remain, shall we say, VAXX'd from the Pfizer and Moderna jabbies, right? This woman here just took a test. It says this unvaccinated woman sent her blood to a website called safeblood.com to see if there was any evidence of VAXX contamination. Spoiler alert, both Pfizer and Moderna were found in her blood. It says we're all screwed. Nobody should have ever taken that death jab. I'm going to mute this because I don't have her audio patched in. She's talking about how she's basically revealing her results on a live video. Okay, so she didn't even know the results of the test that she took until she is making this video. So they basically emailed her back and said, if you have green blocks on your test, you're good. Well, guess what? She did not have green blocks on her test. And she was not VAXXed. Let me find the test. That's what I'm looking for. Right here. So let me pause it on this. She said, uneffing believable. Well, obviously my results weren't what I thought. So here's the test, and she doesn't have green anywhere here. It's all yellow, which means she's supposed to follow up with the instructions on next steps, which is what she's supposed to do. I don't know what she actually will do, but mRNA sequence, yes. N1 methyl, whatever that is, yes. And she has not only Pfizer, but Pfizer bival and Moderna bival all present in her blood. And was it a disruption to her RNA and DNA? Yes and yes. So that's some scary stuff. She claims she was never VAXXed. She did say that she had some strain of COVID at some point. She did not say if she got tested, which I would be interested to know. Did she ever get tested by, like swabbed? And my guess is she probably did, but maybe not. So it is interesting, though, because she thought she would come back with a green, clean report, and that is not what happened. They did say we were in danger of shedding horrific news right there. Yeah, that's right, Miss Emily, that's right. And that's exactly what she's finding out by having her blood tested at safeblood.com to see if there was any evidence of VAXX contamination. So that's just an example. I'm sure you guys have heard the horror stories, but that's the first one I've seen of someone actually taking a test and proving, yep, she's got the affected blood, which means we probably all do. All right, so this is a site called Based Underground. I thought it was interesting. I haven't read this, so I just thought I would check into it while we're live here. Globalists weaponize AI against conspiracy theorists while fulfilling end times deception. It sounds interesting. In March 2026, the World Economic Forum dropped yet another stark warning. Advanced AI and synthetic media are fueling a systemic global crisis of disinformation that threatens to destabilize democracies worldwide. Yes. Meaning too much truth is getting out. That's what that means. According to the WEF's own writers, technologies like social media, online chat, and artificial intelligence now allow opportunistic actors, so we're back to the actors again, to target people with manipulative narratives designed to stir fear, anxiety, and anger. That's because we're focusing on the truth of what's coming out of what the idiot elites are doing to us all. So therefore, yes, designed to stir fear, anxiety, and anger because people are figuring out what they're doing to us. So I would say that's probably true. Only not for the reason that they say. The WEF's Global Risks Report 2026 ranks mis and disinformation among the top short-term global risks, right alongside geoeconomic confrontation and societal polarization. It remains a severe threat across both 2 and 10-year horizons, allegedly catalyzing or worsening nearly every other risk on their list. On the surface, this sounds like a reasonable concern about fake news in the digital age, but for those paying attention, the real story is far darker. It is not a neutral fight against falsehoods. It's the latest phase in a coordinated campaign to label any challenge to the globalist agenda as dangerous disinfo and justify the rollout of AI-powered censorship and narrative control. Yes. The Schwab will do it, Matt says. Yes, that's right. The script flips once again. Biblical lens on the strong delusion. That's what I wanted to see. I wanted to see what they're calling the strong delusion. So there's quite a bit here. So as far as the strong delusion, it says, biblical lens on the strong delusion. Scripture warns us that this exact dynamic would accelerate in the last days. 2 Thessalonians 2, the Apostle Paul describes a coming strong delusion sent by God himself upon those who refuse to love the truth and so be saved. The passage links this deception directly to the rise of the man of sin and the final rebellion before Christ's return. The globalists' obsession with controlling information flows and shaping cognition through AI is not random. It is a counterfeit attempt to play God, deciding what humanity is allowed to believe. When elites push cognitive resilience, quote-unquote, frameworks, and treat human reasoning as something that must be governed like infrastructure, they are building the very mechanisms that could enable the strong delusion on a planetary scale. Jesus himself warned in Matthew 24 that deception would be a primary sign of the end times, with false Christs and false prophets arising to mislead even the elect if possible. Paul told Timothy that in the latter times some would depart from the faith, giving heed to seducing spirits and doctrines of devils. The current push to pathologize dissent fits the pattern perfectly. All right, well, anyway, I thought that was kind of interesting. And mixing, says the Bible and conspiracies mix well together. All right. So anyway, that was just an interesting article that I found. This one, somebody, a friend of mine mentioned this to me earlier today. This is on LifeSite News, but you can find it other places. Canada's House of Commons passes the anti-Christian bill that would criminalize quoting the Bible. Canadian MPs passed Radical Bill C9 in a 186 to 137 vote, and conservatives are now calling on Christians to pray and flood senators with phone calls and emails opposing the bill. It's too late. They've already passed it, haven't they? Maybe it's not too late. I don't know. The majority of Canadian MPs have voted to pass a liberal bill that would allow the criminalization of religious expression and belief when quoting parts of the Bible, including about homosexuality and gender. Early Wednesday evening, MPs from the Liberal Party and the Bloc, has to do with Quebec, in a 186 to 137 vote passed Bill C9, known as, they're calling it Combating Hate Act. They always couch it that way, don't they? Conservatives, NDP, and the Green Party MPs voted against the bill in a rare form of unity among the usually opposing parties. Yeah, but it wasn't enough, apparently. The bill now heads to Canada's rubber stamp Senate for review. Okay. So that should be a shoe-in, I would think, for passing this thing. Last-minute effort by the Conservatives to change the wording of the bill failed to pass. Earlier this week, Liberal MPs forced the bill through the reporting stage after earlier, as reported by LifeSite News, which is this website, shutting down all debate on the bill in the committee stage. Of course they do. You have to shut down the debate, that way they can't lose. Anyway, eventually here it will go to the Prime Minister. And, you know, this is Mark Carney, he is the right-hand man and globalist banker, right-hand man of King Charles III. So don't you think he will be passing this one? He'll be staying up late at night and signing paperwork in order to make sure it passes. Seems to me. So I mentioned at the beginning of the show tonight that it seems like there's more and more push for nuclear here. Iran's hardliners push for nuclear weapons as tensions escalate with the U.S. and Israel. This is on Natural News. Iran's hardline factions, emboldened by recent U.S. and Israeli strikes, are advocating for withdrawal from the Nuclear Non-Proliferation Treaty and openly pursuing nuclear weapons. Key figures including Islamic Revolutionary Guard Corps IRGC leaders and conservative commentators argue that a nuclear deterrent is now necessary for Iran's survival. The killing of Ayatollah Khomeini and other moderates has strengthened hardliners, reducing internal resistance to abandoning nuclear restraint. Yeah, that's the thing. This whole bombing of Iran has really galvanized the population with the existing government, it sounds like. And it was quite a miscalculation on Trump's part to think that they wanted to overthrow their government and have a similar society to like the ones in the West. That I don't think they wanted that. Do you? Iran has halted cooperation with the International Atomic Energy Agency, raising global concerns about unchecked uranium enrichment. Without inspections, the world cannot verify Iran's nuclear activities, increasing fears of rapid weaponization. If Iran withdraws from the NPT, which is the Nuclear Non-Proliferation Treaty, it would signal open intent to build nuclear arms, drastically escalating tensions. The Middle East faces a dangerous shift in power dynamics, risking broader conflict as Tehran weighs its next move. Well, I got to tell you, am I afraid that Iran will use a nuclear weapon? They might. If they had it, they might. But I'm really afraid that Israel will, and they do have it. I think if anybody uses a nuke, it will be Israel. They've already threatened to do it. And that is why Trump got involved so quickly, to keep that from happening, ostensibly. And we reported months ago, based on an explosion that happened, I think it was in Syria. I'd have to go look. It was a long time ago at this point, several months back, probably the end of last year. They did use some version of a nuke because radiation was detected right after that. I think that was in Syria. And everybody ignored it. You know, it's probably some tactical weapon of some sort. But they have larger weapons. And I'm thinking that if anybody's going to use one, it's going to be Israel. Not necessarily Iran. Now, will Iran have to strike back with some sort of nuclear device? They probably will if they can, but I don't know that they will be the first to launch, if you know what I mean. I think Israel is certainly evil enough to be that country. InfoWars article, thousands of U.S. troops arrive in the Middle East. So they are continuing to escalate here. More than 3,500 American soldiers deployed to conflict zone. More on the way. U.S. Tripoli with about 2,500 Marines arrived in the Middle East. U.S. CENTCOM said in a social media post that the Tripoli, which serves as a flagship, arrived in its area of responsibility, as well as transport the Stryker fighter aircraft, as well as amphibious assault assets to the region. So that sounds like they're going to do some sort of land assault of some sort, doesn't it? And let's hope it's not the Strait, because the Strait is that is a kill zone. The arrival of the U.S. troops in the region comes after at least 10 U.S. troops, including 2 who were seriously wounded, were injured when Iran fired 6 ballistic missiles and 29 drones at Saudi Arabia's Prince Sultan Air Base. Yeah, we mentioned that earlier tonight. And so that's just some of the newest injured troops. We don't know how many have been killed. 13 is the official number, I think, still, but it's probably far higher. The Houthis are now entering the war on the side of Iran, of course. At least 15 Americans wounded in major strikes on the Saudi base. Yeah, and again, as we said before, some of them were very serious. So if those people don't make it, then we'll be piling on to the body count here. Anyway, that particular story is on InfoWars. And one more from this site. U.S. worked directly with terrorists in Syria on Israel's behalf, according to Joe Kent. U.S. worked directly with Al-Qaeda and Islamic State, IS, formerly ISIS, to topple former President Bashar al-Assad and destroy Syria. U.S. President Donald Trump's former counterterrorism chief, Joe Kent, has said. Yeah. Which, we'd heard this already. Oh, yeah, there was a an interview here. I guess it's posted now. It's available between InfoWars reporter Harrison Smith and Joe Kent. And I did see some clips of that a day or two ago. So yeah, important stuff. So anyway, that is another InfoWars article. And then we've got one from Vaccine Impact. So let's look at that real quick. I wanted to save some time for a little bit longer story. So we're working our way that way. Most powerful energy crisis in human history is looming. Russian oil exports halting after Ukraine's attacks. Ukrainian drone attacks on Russian ports and refineries. Kind of forgotten about the war going on in Ukraine, but apparently it's still going on. I guess they haven't solved that one yet either. Iran has halted passage to all ships trying to pass through the strait as they prepare for a possible ground assault from U.S. troops that have been deployed to the region this week. In this interview with independent journalist Pepe Escobar, he reveals how Iran's parliament is now passing laws requiring any ships who pass through the strait to now pay a toll up to $2 million, but payable in Chinese yuan. This article is dated 2 days ago. President Trump has allegedly delayed any attacks on Iran's energy infrastructure, but Israel has reportedly just bombed an Iranian steel manufacturer. Yeah, and they were bombing, or apparently doing something to Tehran's power grid as well, as we reported at the beginning of the show tonight. Iran has issued urgent evacuation warnings for major steel facilities across the region, declaring them imminent military targets. Iran has also promised to target energy-producing facilities in the UAE if they join the war. So yeah, they are hitting the nearby countries who have any sort of U.S. involvement, Israeli involvement, which, how can you blame them? Anyway, that is a Vaccine Impact article here. I was looking to see what it said about the Ukrainian drone situation. It says, meanwhile, Ukraine has bombed key Russian ports and refineries in the Baltic, taking out nearly 40% of Russia's oil export capability, as Russia is now halting all oil exports until they can be brought back online. I'd heard that Russia had halted the exports, but I didn't know that was the reason why. According to this, Ukraine has bombed Russian ports and refineries in the Baltic Sea. So I think that's what's going on. That might be why it stopped. Pretty long article here on Vaccine Impact. All right, and then let's see here. GeoWatch for this week, show number 555. All right, Earth is being pushed beyond its limits as energy imbalance reaches record high. That's a Guardian quote here. Far more of the sun's heat is entering the atmosphere than escaping back into space. This is scientifically termed as Earth's energy imbalance. Record-shattering heat around the world and an increasing loss of natural heat blocking cumulus clouds are but two of the countless consequences of what is unfolding. Geoengineering is a core component of this equation. Climate engineering, weather warfare operations are completely hindering the planet's ability to respond to damage already done. If these operations are not fully exposed and halted, our days are numbered. And then here's the 90-second alert of this same hour-long radio broadcast embedded on the page. 90-second alert, geoengineering, what could possibly go wrong? Yeah, and we put out, right before we went live tonight on this show, I put out another broadcast email out to the list. So make sure you're on the newsletter list for geoengineeringwatch.org if you're not already. We put out another alert for toxic skies. He called me earlier tonight, just moments really before going live, and we talked briefly, and he said that the skies in Northern California where Dane is it's just unbelievable. He says it's like living on an alien planet. He said there are no cumulus clouds at all around. So, and that's what he mentions here in this blurb here on this page. But the 90-second alert that we just sent out tonight is about toxic skies. And one of the questions he asked was, how long can you hold your breath? Because that is the truth. Toxic skies is absolutely right. All right, what does the old scheduled weather look like? Well, we have the split down the middle, kind of. We have heat on the coasts and cooler areas in the middle. So the geoengineers will be hard at work in the central U.S., apparently, at least to some degree. It is below normal in certain areas. No snowstorms, though, I don't think. It will be above normal pretty much everywhere else except right down the middle. Again, that is not nature. That is geoengineering. You can't have this. This is just completely unnatural. As we mentioned pretty much every week on this show. The scheduled weather and the dates on that one, this is April 4th to April 8th. So this is what we'll expect in the coming, few days or so. April 4th to April 8th. And then kind of juxtapose that with the Climate Reanalyzer, which is another site that I like to look at. This is starting really today, days 1 through 3 from now, so 29, 30, 31 really. We are about, where I am, we're about 6 degrees above normal, but you can see out west, 25 degrees above normal in Colorado. 25 degrees above normal. 20 degrees above normal in Utah, and Arizona, and New Mexico. So it's just really hot out west as of right now, really. And then days 4 through 6, that will change. It will drop off out west, and we will have the heat where I am. We'll be about 15 degrees above normal starting about April 1st. April 1st, this coming month. So yeah, just a few days. So it will cool off a little bit out west, but not much. We've got some lower temps, I guess, in the extreme northwest. And then 7 to 10 days out, here comes the cooler temperatures. Again, geoengineered. You can see kind of down the middle section here, that's a little bit cooler. And then heat out west and heat back east. Will be about 3 degrees above normal. So not drastic, but just a stone's throw away in Virginia, it will be 11 degrees above normal. So just a little ways away. So that's pretty crazy. That's on Climate Reanalyzer, which is a site that I like to look at and mention on this show. Climate and Economy, climateandeconomy.com, 28th March. All right, climate news. Very alarming. Winter sees Arctic sea ice hit record low for second year running. This is on a website called carbonbrief.org. Very alarming. Winter sees Arctic ice hit record low for second year running. So again, they have changed the way that they measure the ice pack. Now it's just any amount of slush. Any amount of slush is considered ice pack. It doesn't have to be solid. It doesn't have to be so many inches. It's just slush. And they can geoengineer the cool to create the slush. So that's what's going on. We may have a blue ocean event this year. Mr. Dane's been talking about that. That means all of the ice, for the most part, will be melted, essentially. Once that happens, there is no going back. So we'll see. We'll see what happens. Again, breaking news that proves we're living in the end times. If that is what's in store, I think that's yet again another thing that God will have to fix when he comes back. You know what I mean? Extraordinary warmth in Northern Europe. Farmers push for suspension of carbon charges on fertilizer as prices soar due to the Iran war. Yep. Severe weather disrupts daily life in the Balkans. Toxic punch fears Russia's war is pushing the Black Sea and its dolphins past a tipping point. So everyone's suffering, even the dolphins. Large-scale emergency response to floods in Syria. Man. Kenya drought. So we have deluge or we have droughts. Pretty much one or the other. Absolute insanity. Juan de Nova Island in Mozambique Channel, record heat again. Never heard of that. And here's flooding in Oman. World's tallest building hit by lightning as Dubai suffers flooding after heavy storms. So flooding in Dubai. Do you suppose they are hitting Iran with ongoing weather warfare? I mean, there's been reports of that for a long time. It's probably they've probably upped that, whatever they're doing. I'm sure they're probably increasing those attacks, just based on the war going on there. Anyway, yeah, record heat, flooding, droughts, you name it. Too crazy. And animals suffering right along with us. All right, and then one more here from Israel 365. This one's not your typical one that I would pull up from this site, but yet again, we're complaining about anti-Semitism. Exposed Instagram algorithm flooding millions with anti-Semitic content, new research reveals. Well, maybe people are just understanding what anti-Semitism is and isn't, and perhaps they're just talking freely versus an algorithm flooding millions with anti-Semitic content. It says alarming new findings from the Combat Anti-Semitism Movement's Anti-Semitism Research Center. How many times can we squeeze the word anti-Semitism into a title? Have uncovered that Instagram is not merely hosting anti-Semitic content, but actively amplifying it to millions of users through its own recommendation systems. On Thursday, March 26th, a groundbreaking new report lays bare the scale and mechanics of the phenomenon, raising urgent questions about the responsibility of social media platforms in the global surge of online hate. When you talk about truth, you are talking hate. What's the old saying? Truth is treason in an empire of lies. And it's never been as true as it is now, if you ask me. Titled, Engineered Exposure, How Anti-Semitic Content is Pushed and Amplified to Millions Across Instagram, the study reveals that Instagram's algorithm is systematically feeding users anti-Semitic material, often without them actively seeking it out. During a focused 96-hour monitoring period, ARC, which is one of these organizations, Anti-Semitism Research Center, ARC, researched and identified 100 anti-Semitic posts that were directly recommended to accounts by the platform. I want to see an example of what they're calling an anti-Semitic post. It's probably anything that just has the slightest little criticism of something Israel's doing. You can't have that and not be called anti-Semitic. I want to see some examples, though. I don't think they're showing us that. The posts generate more than 5.3 million likes and 3.8 million shares, with an estimated potential reach of up to 280 million users. Yeah, I mean, they're not forcing people to like them, though, are they? They might be forcing it in some way to make it to their eyeballs so they see it, but they can't force somebody to click on it and like it. According to the report, the content follows familiar and dangerous patterns, ranging from conspiracy theories to overt demonization, mirroring propaganda tropes that have historically fueled anti-Semitism across generations. Crucially, the study underscores that it's not simply a case of user-generated content existing on the platform. Rather, it points to algorithmic amplification, where Instagram's own systems actively promote such material in order to maximize engagement. This distinction, experts say, is critical. Yeah, the experts, they always say something. Well, I say that it's BS, don't you? Ben Shapiro. Total BS. Well, anyway, that was the end of those articles. And what I wanted to do is, let's start with this video. I'm going to go grab a drink and we will settle in and talk about this crazy prophecy. I don't know if you call it a prophecy. That's what I've been calling it. But let's take a look at this and we will move on from there. I think this will be a good introduction into what I wanted to get into. We've got a little time yet tonight, 11:30 where I am here. So yeah, let's take a look at this first video. And this is about, you'll see Alex and you'll see the dark journalist, Daniel List, on this short video. It's a 3-minute clip. And they're going to get into this a little bit. This is where I first heard about this guy named Chris Bledsoe. And if you guys are familiar with this already, my apologies. I had not heard of this, and I'm guessing many of you had not either. So let's watch this video, and we'll go from there. Here we go.
And so I don't like to go off things like this. There's so much controversy, but you can't I don't know your view on this one, if you know who he is, but UFO researcher Chris Bledsoe claimed in 2012 in a bunch of interviews that Iran-Israel missile exchange that orbs would rise. This is 14 years ago, before any of this, from the oceans as a sign of all of this. I'm going to play this clip and get your take on this. I have no idea what you're going to say. I don't know what to say about this, but here it is.
And I put this in writing to the Pentagon in 2012 when I told this. Okay?
2012.
One thing she told me was, when you see Iran and Israel exchanging missiles, and I saw it, the way she tells me is a vision of, I see it like a living picture screen. I could see the rockets flying. Then all of a sudden, orbs appeared out of the ocean and everywhere.
Great.
And I told the government, if this happens, the orbs are going to appear and wake people up and stop it. That's what she told me.
April 2026.
Yeah.
And okay, you've put yourself in it there, Chris.
It's okay. It's okay.
It's going to be Chris Bledsoe says April 2026 is when it all happens.
But I can tell you this, when I told this to the government about 2026, I just repeated what she told me. They immediately put remote viewers on. And all of a sudden, all the remote viewers are saying, oh my God, 2026, 2027, something is going to happen. 2026, Easter.
What will happen?
The star will, the alignment she told me about, that the star of Regulus would be on the horizon in front of the Sphinx. At that moment, there'd be a new knowledge. Well, I had no idea if this was even possible, but these astronomers run it through the machines and it comes out that star is going to come up on the horizon in Easter of 2026.
Easter 2026.
I gave him the specific time. And it was with Robert Grant that I told him about this alignment and all. And then he's like, oh my God. He's been looking for this ruby. This little ruby you have to find and place it between the paws of Sphinx to make this event that he knows is going to happen in 2026. I said, Robert, it's not a ruby, it's the Star of Regulus. He looks at it, he said, oh my God, it's the King's Star. So, what's going to happen, I don't know. But I think it's possible that's the return of
Christ.
Yeah.
The President of the United States today said on camera, we're thinking about using nukes against Iran. He said we could eliminate Iran, make it uninhabitable forever in an hour.
We could take them out by this afternoon. In fact, within an hour. They literally would never be able to build that country back.
We have weapons that can do that. Well, those are nuclear weapons. The President of the United States just saying out loud, if this gets more intense, we could nuke them.
Yeah, okay. So that was, I think, a pretty good introduction to this whole thing. And I'm not sure if you guys are familiar with this at all. I was not. First heard about it on that show. I guess that was from the Friday show. So just a couple days ago. And it is interesting, isn't it? So let's take a look at this just a little bit closer. The one thing I found before we get too far into it is that this is Chris Bledsoe. He did an interview with Charlie Kirk, believe it or not. So Charlie knew about this guy and interviewed him. We'll come back to this, and we're not going to actually listen to any of this interview, although I will link to it in the post that I send out on Substack this week, probably Tuesday. And we're going to, before we do that though, let's play one other clip here. I've got several that have to do with this. And that little one, the one that we just watched, I felt like was a good introduction to what's going on. The important one, though, really, I think, from what I can tell, I spent quite a bit of time on this last night, kind of going through everything I could find. And this interview that Chris Bledsoe did with Sean Ryan, many of you guys know who he is, I think it was probably the best one that I could find as far as the quality, the way the questions were asked, and his description of the entire story, which we can't really get into the entire story tonight, although I'm going to give you an abbreviated version of his story. And so let's start with this clip, And this is actually a piece right from the Sean Ryan show. And there's no music in this or anything. I'm hoping that YouTube won't kill it for copyright anything. I don't think it will. It should be fine, but you never know in a live stream. So if the live stream ends, you'll know why. But hopefully it won't. This is about a 7-minute piece here, but this is an important piece of this puzzle that we'll get into more after this clip plays.
So eventually, I began to remember some of what happened, not all, but what I can tell you, the 4 hours while I was gone was a virtual tour. I was inside a bubble, something that was solid that I could stand on, but I couldn't see the walls, but I could touch them. But I could see everything in every direction. And there were always 3 figures behind me that were shadowy, and they were narrating what I was seeing. And I saw North America from way up high. I saw the whole United States. And then I was taken to Egypt. And I saw the pyramids. And this Hathor's temple. I saw that. The Sphinx facing to the east. And then the lady comes back. The following year, after all this, this was in 2013 is when I really got that message from her, because that's when I was asked by the Pentagon, by 2 Air Force generals, to put it in writing what she told me. And I did. And this was on request from NASA, a friend at NASA. So he come and got it and hand-delivered it to these generals. And she told me that, she said that when the star of Regulus, she called it a red star. When you look at it, it looks blue. But she said when Regulus is red on the horizon, in front of the gaze of the Sphinx, before daylight. So in other words, when it's sitting right on top of the horizon, before the sun comes up, that moment would mark a change in humanity's knowledge. And she showed me other things. War, us bombing Iran, us bombing Syria. And in them days, none of that had happened. So I put all that on this piece of paper. And now I've had so many write me back, oh my God, you see they just bombed Iran, or Iran just bombed us. You know, you were right the whole time. And I did that in 2012. And so what they did was I gave them the date of 2026, because they took that celestial event and ran it through these machines that showed that exact alignment will happen in 2026 at Easter.
What will happen?
The star will, the alignment she told me about, that the star of Regulus would be on the horizon in front of the Sphinx. At that moment, there'd be a new knowledge. Well, I had no idea if this was even possible, you know, but these astronomers run it through the machines, and it comes out that star is going to come up on the horizon in Easter of 2026. And from that point forward, they started remote viewing the state. Government did. And now you hear it all over TV. 2026, that's the big date. 2027, that year, something's going to happen. Armageddon, you hear it all over. You know, you hear it on TV. If you study, like, I've heard even, well, I won't say names, but...
Please do.
Well, you know Lou Elizondo, right? Lou's mentioned that date. A lot of people have.
Easter 2026.
Well, the year 2026. I gave him the specific time. And it was with Robert Grant that I told him about this alignment and all. And then he's like, oh my God. He's been looking for this ruby. This little ruby you have to find and place it between the paws of the Sphinx to make this event that he knows is going to happen in 2026. I said, Robert, it's not a ruby, it's the star of Regulus. He looks like, he's like, oh my God, it's the King star. So what's going to happen, I don't know. But I think it's possible that's the return of
Christ.
Yeah. Or the lady and the whole heavenly host living with us, Jesus. That's the first time I've ever said that in my life, publicly. You're the first. And a million people's asked me this. So I think it's entirely possible that, because she told me that when the suffering of man becomes too great, that they're going to stop it and they're going to snuff out the darkness. That's why the military and the government all want to know about this, because they know it's real. They know this lady has been seen a million times. And when she comes, she's always warning of some big catastrophe. In the Native American world, they call her the White Buffalo Calf Lady. And she would come warning about, some tribe coming to kill everybody or some big event. And it's in every culture that way. But I'm as, I wish I knew more.
What else do you know?
I just, I think we're living in the worst possible times right now, that if we don't make some changes, there's going to be some major disasters about to happen. And it's man-made. It's not solar flare. It's not any of that. It's a dark force. Because she told me, well, I'll tell you what she told me. This is what I put in writing, part of it. She said, there are people in power. I put this in writing in 2012. She said, there are people in power. And I'm not going to say where she focused my thoughts on that, but they're script in the book of Revelation to bring about Armageddon and the end of the world. They're doing it intentionally, and that's what she told me. And that's the very thing the main meat of the whole message I sent to these generals. So it makes sense, right?
Okay, so that was a piece of the 2-hour plus interview that, again, we will link to in the Substack post that I send out. That gives you a better idea of his character and how I think he's really believable. The lady he's talking about is an angelic being that he's encountered multiple times. Oftentimes on Easter, which is a whole other story, because he seems to think that Easter is the same thing as Resurrection Day, even though many of us know that that is not true. But that's sort of a side aspect of things. What I would like to do is play this other video, one more video of this, where he gives, this is a full, very precise reenactment, if you will, of what he explains in the entire interview that we just watched. So during the course of the Sean Ryan interview, the piece that we just watched, he explains what happened. He explains the whole story, all of the different beings and entities that he ran into. And then the prophecy that he was given, which it has to do with this coming Easter. So literally, April 5th, 2026 is when this celestial alignment of the Regulus constellation lines up with the Sphinx in Egypt and all these things. Well, we're going to look at that as well. I've got the Stellarium website pulled up, and we're going to look at that and see if he's accurate or not. But before we do that, let's watch this. I think this will give you a really good overview as to the entire story in a nutshell. But I will ask you to do one thing for me, and that is to save time. I have actually taken this video from a YouTube channel. It's really, really well done. It's like a combination of anime and AI, and they do a tremendous job, I think, of sharing exactly the story that he describes on the Sean Ryan show and puts it in a video form that you can understand, and it kind of breaks it down. So what I was going to say was, though, I've taken that video and condensed it down. It's the full video, but I have doubled the speed and removed the music. So you'll have to pay close attention if you want to get the full story, because instead of 26 minutes long, it's 13 minutes long. So that's still a long piece here to play tonight, but it's the full story, and I feel like it's important because I want to get into the actual prophecy part that he talks about with the constellation, with, Regulus and the prophecy and all that.
A dark force within the halls of power is attempting to carry out an end-time script, one that could trigger a great upheaval. And on Easter of 2026, when the red star Regulus aligns with the gaze of the Sphinx just before dawn, new knowledge will be delivered to the consciousness of humanity. Tell this story.
This secret prophecy is now one of the most talked about revelations in the world. But what hidden meaning lies within these words? The one who received this message was a former construction worker from North Carolina, a man named Chris Bledsoe. According to Chris, the prophecy was given to him by a radiant female being he calls the Lady, a mysterious presence who appeared out of light. In this video, we explore UFO of God, Chris Bledsoe's written account of his mission to help humanity, and the enigmatic prophecy delivered to him by the Lady herself. Chris Bledsoe was an ordinary construction worker living a quiet life in North Carolina. But in 2007, his world completely collapsed. A once successful business had fallen apart. He was forced to sell his company. His savings were gone. And his long-standing illness, Crohn's disease, grew worse and worse, to the point where he couldn't even afford his children's lunch money. The overwhelming stress consumed both his body and mind. And then, on a cold winter night by the river, something extraordinary happened. January 8th, 2007, the day Chris Bledsoe's life changed forever. After finishing a rare bit of work, he received a call from one of his subcontractors, inviting him to go fishing. Chris went along with his son, Chris Jr., heading deep into the woods along the Cape Fear River in North Carolina. While the others stayed by the riverbank to fish, Chris wandered off alone into the forest. Years of depression had given him a habit. Whenever things started to feel good, he would leave before the moment could collapse, before anxiety, stomach pain, or money troubles came rushing back. He sat at the base of a large tree, closed his eyes, and whispered a quiet prayer in his heart.
Lord, please help me. What am I supposed to do? I'm 46, I'm sick, and I can't even provide for my children. I need help. Please.
After 5 p.m., the forest began to darken. Chris started climbing the hill, heading back toward the others. Then, he heard it. A rustling sound in the brush beside him, as if something was walking there. Chris had spent his whole life in the woods, hunting and growing up in nature, but he had never felt fear like this. When he stopped, the sound stopped, and every so often, the rustling returned, and it sounded disturbingly like something walking on 2 feet. A wave of unease swept over him. Driven by fear, Chris hurried toward the top of the hill. About 30 feet from the summit, he saw it, a massive red light hanging in the sky. At first, he thought his eyes were playing tricks on him, but when he took a few more steps and the full shape came into view, his mind froze. It was a massive sphere of light, blood red, surrounded by a ring of fire. And then, as he reached a point where he could see the valley below, he noticed something even more terrifying. A second one. 2 fiery orbs, floating silently just above the distant treetops. Each was nearly 45 feet across, about the size of a small house, glowing with a mix of deep crimson and burning orange, its flames shooting outward in every direction. Yet the spheres remained perfectly still. Chris had never cared about UFOs, but sheer terror drove him to crouch down and hide. He decided to run, but just before he turned away, he looked up one last time. In that instant, a third sphere appeared directly above him, materializing without a sound and stopping dead in the air. The timing was too perfect. In that moment, Chris knew. They're watching me. I'm on their radar. A shiver ran through his entire body, and a wave of terror overtook him. And then, everything went blank. The next thing he remembers is suddenly finding himself running, about 50 feet away from the campfire where his friends had been waiting. Those 4 hours are gone from his memory, completely erased, even though to Chris, the entire experience felt like only 20 minutes. When he finally reached the others, the subcontractors looked at him and said, "Where on earth were you?"
What do you mean? I was just out in the field, right over there.
"No way. We've been out here searching for you all night. We covered that entire field looking for you."
What are you talking about? I was only gone a few minutes. Wait, where's my son?
Chris then learned that his son, Chris Jr., had gone out to search for him and had been missing for 2 hours. Panic overwhelmed him, and he ran into the dark woods calling his son's name. When he finally found him, the boy was crying, "Dad, why did you leave me? I was scared of the monsters." Chris Jr. had endured a terrifying encounter of his own. While searching for his father, Chris Jr. saw 2 glowing red orbs floating at about waist height further down the path. Then, as he moved toward the edge of the forest, he witnessed small humanoid beings emerging from between the trees. They were only about 3 feet tall, with eyes that glowed a vivid red. According to his testimony, these small beings watched him closely, and he became completely paralyzed. He couldn't scream, couldn't run, couldn't move at all. For nearly 2 hours, he remained frozen in absolute terror. When father and son finally reunited, they both blurted out the same thing. "I saw a UFO. I saw the beings." Then together, they returned to the others. Then, the phenomenon escalated. 9 star-like orbs appeared overhead, moving in a perfect circle across the sky. 3 of them suddenly descended onto the far side of the river, and everyone witnessed it. "Come on, this can't be real." Panic erupted, and the group jumped into the truck, speeding away in fear. But as they reached the top of the hill, they saw it. The same massive third orb that had taken Chris, now hovering directly over the road, blocking their path. It was about 50 feet long, egg-shaped, and rotating with razor-sharp crystalline light. Chris later reported how the object hung there, silent and immovable. And at the climax of the encounter, the orb touched the deepest wound of his past. While driving the truck, Chris looked up and saw it hovering over the exact spot where his first wife had died in an accident 20 years earlier. In that moment, a wave of visions and emotion flooded through him. A message, clear and unmistakable. Your wife's death was not your fault. You no longer need to carry this burden. For the first time in 20 years, the crushing guilt that had haunted him finally lifted. But the night was far from over. Chris and his son rushed home around 11:30 p.m., both shaken to their core. His son was in a state of panic, turning on every light in the house, pulling down all the blinds, and locking himself in a windowless bathroom, too terrified to come out. Moments after they returned home, all 15 of Chris's father's hunting dogs suddenly erupted into loud barking. But they weren't barking toward the house. They were barking toward the dark woods behind the property. Chris assumed someone had broken into his father's garage. He grabbed his rifle and said, "Son, I have to find out what that is. I have to end this." Driven by a mix of fear and anger, he headed toward the kennels. "Dad, no! Please, don't go outside! Please, Dad, please!" Chris sent the dogs into the woods. Then he ran toward a large oak tree, stopping beneath it to catch his breath. And the moment he turned around, he froze. Standing there was a small figure, about the size of a child, glowing softly with the pale color of moonlight. Its eyes shone a vivid, burning red, and on its chest was a translucent, glass-like triangular symbol that seemed to radiate from within. "Oh my God. I'm sorry. I surrender. I'm sorry. I give up." And then the being replied,
"You do not understand. We did not come to harm you. We came to help you."
This small being was, as Chris would later describe, a type of guardian angel, a being of light. And this moment became the turning point that convinced him the phenomenon he was experiencing was connected to something sacred, something meant to help and heal humanity. But the most astonishing miracle came after this strange encounter. Chris's long-suffering Crohn's disease, a condition that had plagued him for years, simply disappeared. Crohn's disease is a chronic, incurable illness that causes severe inflammation and ulcers anywhere along the digestive tract. It's linked to immune dysfunction, stress, and is known for being incredibly difficult to treat. Yet from that night forward, Chris never took Crohn's medication again, and every medical test showed no trace of the disease whatsoever. Chris believed that on the night he cried out for help, when he was ready to end his own life, the appearance of the UFO and his miraculous healing were acts of divine intervention, and so he called the phenomenon the UFO of God. But this miracle soon brought devastating consequences for him and his family. His testimony was mocked as lies, dismissed as madness, and even condemned as something demonic. And from that point on, the Bledsoe family entered what Chris describes as 5 years of darkness, a period of isolation and rejection from their entire community. On the night of January 8th, 2007, Chris's Crohn's disease was healed in what he describes as a miracle. But this unbelievable event did not bring social miracles for his family. It brought something closer to hell. Chris had been a deacon in a Pentecostal church, and when he began speaking about the existence of UFOs, the community, and even the church, turned against him. In their doctrine, UFOs and extraterrestrial beings did not exist, so they concluded that whatever Chris had witnessed must have been demonic, an encounter with Satan himself. Chris had once been deeply devoted to his faith, trusted as a church leader, but after sharing his experience, he was harshly condemned by his church, relatives, and local community as someone who had interacted with the devil. What hurt Chris the most was the impact on his children. At school, they were bullied as the UFO kids, and even some teachers mocked them. Under this crushing pressure, the smiles vanished from the Bledsoe household. The marriage began to fall apart, the children became isolated, and the entire family was overwhelmed by shame and anger. Yet the phenomenon did not stop. Strange lights, floating orbs, began appearing inside their home, and shadow-like figures were seen passing straight through the walls. While the family lived in constant fear, a strange double life began for Chris. A NASA scientist named Hal Povenmire started visiting him in secret. At first, Hal came with one intention, to debunk Chris's story. But after witnessing the phenomena himself, he realized he couldn't explain it away. Instead, he became a close friend to the Bledsoe family. Even so, Chris was sinking once again into the depths of despair. He carried unbearable guilt for the suffering his experiences had brought upon his family, and he began to feel that he might have to end everything. After 5 years of this hellish struggle, a day came in 2012 when Chris made a painful decision. He could no longer allow his family to suffer. It was Easter Sunday, 2012. Around 9:30 that night, he looked up toward the sky and said,
"Thank you for ruining my life and my family's life. I'm done. I won't speak of this ever again. I'm grateful for the help you gave me, but I cannot let you destroy my family anymore."
And so, he went to bed that night, vowing to cut all ties with the phenomenon. Burdened by guilt and sorrow, believing he had ruined his son's futures, he felt ready to end everything. But at 3 a.m. the next morning, while Chris was asleep in his room, he suddenly heard a loud, unmistakable voice, the same presence he had encountered back in 2007, a powerful, commanding voice that thundered,
"Arise."
Filled with fear and confusion, Chris found himself guided by a shadow-like presence toward the outdoor dog kennel. There, the dark figure handed him a strange creature without warning. He was told he must carry it, that it was a keeper. When Chris held it in his hands, he felt its sharp, bristling fur, like a hedgehog covered in needles. Yet it had no head, no tail, just a disturbing, living form. The moment he placed this bizarre object inside the kennel, something impossible happened. A blast of wind, like a cannon, threw Chris backward. As he hit the ground and looked up, he saw a massive, translucent bull charging through the air above him, its body filled with the light of distant stars. And when the celestial bull vanished, a radiant woman appeared before him, glowing with a brilliance that filled the entire space. She wore a long, white dress and floated gracefully above the ground, gazing down at him with a beauty so breathtaking, it seemed almost unreal. Her garment resembled the robes of an ancient priestess, like the flowing attire of a goddess in Roman sculpture. And then, without moving her lips, she spoke directly to Chris.
You know why you are here. This is the burden you must carry. Tell this story. And if you do, I will help you, and I will always be with you.
This radiant woman was the very being Chris would come to call the Lady, a presence almost like a divine mother. And then, she revealed who she truly was.
I am the divine feminine, the manifestation of universal love. Throughout history, I have been known by many names, including Hathor. There is a dark force in this world, a force embedded within those who hold power, a force working to fulfill an end-time script through the Book of Revelation, seeking to bring great upheaval. This darkness disregards human life and consciousness. It seeks to erase the presence of the divine. Your role is to tell the truth, that this phenomenon is rooted in love and benevolence, and has come to transform human consciousness. If you choose silence, there will be blood on your hands. When the red star Regulus aligns with the gaze of the Sphinx just before dawn, new knowledge will come into the world.
Chris interpreted this as a major turning point, that around Easter of 2026, the old ways will end and something new will begin. Why did he reach that conclusion? Why 2026? And what exactly is supposed to happen? Let's look a little deeper. The message the lady gave him centered around the alignment of a star called Regulus, symbolizing a moment of great transition. She referred to Regulus as the red star, but Chris himself knew that Regulus actually appears blue to the naked eye. Regulus is in fact a blue star. However, when a star is close to the horizon, the atmosphere can make it appear red. So he believes this is why she called Regulus the red star, even though its true color is blue. This unusual phenomenon is not simply a planetary alignment. The Great Sphinx of Giza was built facing directly toward the east, and according to Chris, on that morning, the star Regulus, known in Leo as the King's Star, will rise precisely in the line of the Sphinx's gaze. Then, moments later, the sun will rise directly behind it, creating a rare and powerful alignment. Some researchers believe the ancient Egyptians used the Sphinx as a marker for celestial events, especially the sunrise during the spring equinox. The astronomical alignment Chris describes for 2026 bears a striking resemblance to certain Hopi prophecies. A star appears, a transformation comes before dawn, and new knowledge descends upon the world. The significance of this message quickly became impossible to ignore. Word of it spread, and soon, government officials and military personnel began paying very close attention. Why were top-level agencies suddenly so interested? Because when Chris presented this information to the Pentagon and several Air Force generals, astronomers were instructed to run precise calculations, and their analysis confirmed it. The alignment of Regulus he described would occur exactly on Easter of 2026. Once that date circulated within government circles, they began conducting remote viewing sessions, attempts to psychically examine future events. According to Chris, officials started openly saying, 2026 is a major date. The lady first appeared to Chris on Easter in 2012, and from that year on, she continued to come to him around Easter, each time delivering messages of great importance. Her prophetic warnings were not limited to the celestial event of 2026. During an encounter on Easter of 2019, she gave Chris a stark and urgent warning. A difficult time was approaching, a time of famine, of disease, and of fear spreading across the world. When the pandemic reshaped the planet in 2020, Chris became convinced that this was exactly what the lady had foretold, a period marked by suffering, death, locked doors, and isolation. Even with everything Chris had experienced, one question still remained. What was the strange creature handed to him by the shadowy presence just before he met the lady? What was the true identity of this so-called keeper? When Chris placed the creature in the dog kennel, he immediately encountered the lady's message and the vision of the celestial bull. Later, Chris asked her what the object truly represented, and she told him.
It is a symbol of humanity, a being without direction, without discernment, without a head or a tail, in desperate need of protection and guidance.
This strange creature, then, was a symbol placed into Chris's hands, a representation of humanity itself. It was also a part of the burden, the mission he had been given, and it stood as a powerful emblem of the vast message the lady entrusted to him, a message about the transformation of human consciousness. Next, let's explore the identity of the celestial bull Chris claims to have seen, the translucent bull filled with stars. Later, Chris discovered that this vision matched perfectly with the symbol found inside the Egyptian pyramids. This discovery was made by Egyptologist Dr. Robert Grant. Using advanced light detection and distance measurement technology, Dr. Grant surveyed the walls inside the king's chamber of the Great Pyramid of Giza. With this technology, he uncovered inscriptions that had never been seen before. Among them was a depiction of a massive bull containing stars within its body. Above the bull was a DNA helix, and on the sarcophagus, the symbols of Alpha and Omega, representing the beginning and the end, a traditional symbol of the divine. When Dr. Grant showed Chris the symbol using a virtual reality viewer, and Chris explained his 2012 encounter, the pieces began to come together. According to their interpretation, the celestial bull carries deep religious and cosmological meaning. The bull represents the celestial bull, a symbol tied to creation itself, and combined with Alpha and Omega, it points to the Creator, the divine beginning and ending of all things. In other words, Chris's desperate cry in 2012 and the phenomenon that answered him appears to mirror a symbol hidden for millennia within one of the most sacred structures of ancient Egypt. Throughout all of these experiences, the central message the lady gave Chris was clear. This phenomenon is compassionate. It is spiritual. It does not appear with malice. It appears to help those who are suffering. In time, Chris came to understand why it had happened to him. These manifestations, he believes, appear before people who carry deep sorrow and trauma. On the night he was financially ruined, physically ill, and emotionally broken, on the night he cried out for help from the depths of his soul, that is when the miracle began. His encounters drew the attention of the CIA, the DIA, the NSA, NASA, and even the Vatican. These agencies were not interested in just another UFO sighting. They were interested in him, in the unusual communication he experienced, and in the physical interactions that seemed linked to his presence. Researchers continue to study him because of his rare and unique abilities, which appear to activate the phenomenon itself. At the heart of it all lies the question of consciousness. Government agencies, it seems, are trying to understand what is happening within Chris's consciousness and why it produces these extraordinary events. Thank you for watching until the end, and I'll see you again in the next video.
All right, there you go. So that was kind of a crash course there on his experience, and I think that was pretty interesting. The you could pretty easily see that there's a lot of New Age things that he is drawing from here, and he professes to be a believer, a Christian, and in fact does talk about Jesus quite often. So from that respect, I do think he's a believer, although he does say that these beings are only good, like they're only from the angelic realm somehow. What he doesn't say is that he doesn't say that they are fallen angels. He doesn't actually say that, although that's what I was thinking, and perhaps many of you guys were as well. Yeah, I mean, to me, it seems like it's probably more related to fallen angels, possibly fallen angel technology, is what we may be talking about here. And the interesting thing, really, of all of that is the prophecy that the lady gave him. And so let's look at who she is. Let's take a look at this. I pulled up. She called herself. She said she was known by many names, but she called herself Hathor. And you can see by reading through this here that it is what seems to be more along the lines of probably fallen angel, either technology or perhaps a son of God who is a fallen angel now, transforming himself into a feminine being. I don't know. There's no way to know. He seems to think that she is who she says she is. I don't know. I'm not so sure I buy that. Hathor is a major ancient Egyptian goddess representing love, beauty, music, fertility, and joy. And notice, fertility, and she keeps coming back on these Easter dates. He mentions in the interview with Sean Ryan that she keeps coming back on Easter every year. And Easter, of course, is Ishtar, which is known as a celebration of fertility, not what we believe as Christians, which is the resurrection of our Lord and Savior Jesus Christ. So I think it's interesting that she calls herself Hathor, and she's a goddess representing fertility, joy, beauty, music, and love. Interesting. As a sky deity, she was often depicted as a cow, a woman with a cow, ears, and horns, or a woman wearing a solar disk, symbolizing her role as a feminine counterpart to Ra and a protective, nurturing mother figure. Again, you have the New Age aspect of this. It says a key aspect of Hathor includes role and symbolism, known as the Mistress of Heaven. It's an interesting name. And the Golden One. She embodied joy and was associated with dancing, alcohol, and the arts. She was considered a mother to the pharaohs, often depicting nursing them. The Eye of Ra. Again, this is all New Age stuff. This isn't Christian, although I think he's sort of conflating the two in a way. The Eye of Ra, in a notable myth, she acted as the Eye of Ra, transforming into the fierce lioness goddess Sekhmet to punish humanity, later returning to her gentle form, and then a funerary role, and then worship and syncretism. So there's these other things that she's known for as well. Personally, I think if it's not outright demonic, then it's certainly what you could consider fallen angel technology, perhaps. The fallen angels, I think, are responsible for this. And we watched the abbreviated story there, where it's condensed down, where you can kind of understand his full story. And you have the situation with the dogs and the barking, and they're freaked out, and the son is freaked out, and they see these beings with the red eyes and all this stuff. That is not of God, right? That's pretty clear to see. That, as scary and as terrible those things are, that can't be of God. I don't know if it's demonic, but it sure sounds like it. And if not, then it was certainly of the fallen angel technology realm. So he claims, and the video kind of makes the little beings with the red eyes look like aliens. He claims in the interview with Sean Ryan and some other interviews that I saw with him that they often looked like little tiny humans with red eyes. So again, could it be fallen angel technology? I don't know. So let's take a look at this. This is the Charlie Kirk thing that I mentioned. He was on the Charlie Kirk show. This is the audio from that interview, and this video here that we're seeing in the box is his encounter, one of his encounters with the flaming, balls, the orbs that are flaming here. You can see how it's dancing through the trees here, and it's pretty convincing. I don't know how you could fake that, because you can see the tree branches right in front of it. It looks pretty real, and they've looped this over and over on this interview. This is not actually Charlie's channel. This is a different channel. But they found some of this video footage that Chris Bledsoe has talked about is out there. There is some, although I don't think he's released all that much. But he says that there's video evidence of a lot of this different stuff. And I don't know how much of it is out there, but I did find this. So it's pretty interesting. It's just a loop here of the encounter that he had, one of them. So I do find that pretty interesting. So I was looking on Stellarium. So let's go back to here and let's get out of this. I just put in Regulus. This is the constellation that he was talking about. That was the prophecy. The prophecy was about, and the dawn, the dawn, and the fact that it's normally blue, but it would look red because it's on the horizon, and all this stuff that he talks about in the prophecy of what he's saying is coming up on Easter this year, which is just in a few days. So I thought we would look at this, and I'm going to prove that I think, based on this, which I don't know how accurate this Stellarium site is. I do know a lot of people use it and depend on it. I do think it's most likely pretty accurate from what I can tell. And I don't think, based on what he said, that things are going to align on the date that he says they will. And I will show you that. So first of all, we have the constellation Regulus. If I throw the constellation art on here, you can see dead center here. Regulus is at the heart of the lion of Judah, if you will. So from that standpoint, that does make sense. Let me turn that off. And let's go to the landscape here. And actually, let's turn that off for a second. Let me set this to current date and time. Yeah, so that is current date and time, 3:30. So you'll note that the prophecy is talking about things happening at dawn. So and there's a little slider here that lets you adjust from twilight to moonlight to dark night to daylight and so on. And you can get to the end here where it says dawn. So if we look at dawn and we go to the correct date and time here that he's talking about, which is on 4/5, which is Easter. And again, we're looking at Regulus here. Let me put that back in. So I think we've lost it. Regulus. Okay. You can see that based on this, and again, looking at dawn, the east is the direction we're looking. And I have this set up so that we have the perspective looking from Giza, right? So I put in Giza, Egypt. That's our location that we're starting from. You can see Egypt here on the map. There's Giza. And we're using this location. Now, that's not the picture we're seeing here. That's just a generic landscape that they put in so you can see what it looks like. If you're looking across the landscape, whatever the landscape might be, you can see that we're looking straight out east here. Here's Regulus. And it's not lined up on April the 5th. It's not lined up with what he's saying. So at dawn, we're at dawn here, and we're looking at April the 5th. Regulus is in the east, but it's not lined up. So therefore, it would be blue still, not red, like the prophecy is saying. For it to be red, it would need to be down here along this line. And this line, of course, is the horizon. So it needs to be there. And what's interesting to me is, if we go back just a little ways here, let me back this up to earlier this year, January. Let's go to the 15th, just for the fun of it. And again, we're still looking at dawn from the Giza perspective. And let's see, 15th of January. And note, it's right there. Let me go a day or so before that. So you can see about around the middle or so of January this year, Regulus was in line with the East. So again, we're looking at it from the Giza, Egypt perspective, okay? And we're looking straight east, and Regulus would align with the horizon, and therefore, you would think would be red, would be more of a red color instead of a blue color like normal. So my point here is, in all saying all this, is that according to this Stellarium program, what the guy's saying as far as April 5th goes is not true. In fact, it already has happened, and you can look at it. Look at this. If I just skip ahead a year, leaving the date, the month and the day the same, just skipping ahead a year, it happens about the same time every year. So I'm not sure how unique what she's describing really is. So I skipped ahead 2 years now. I'm at January 23rd, 2028. It's still on the horizon here. So for whatever reason, it appears that from the Giza perspective, the horizon in the middle of January, pretty much every year, you will see Regulus. So you would have the red version of what's normally blue at dawn around the middle part of January every single year. And, there's 2029, 2030. And I don't know if this is really that accurate or if it's just giving me similar information. But to me, that kind of disproves that the date that he's saying and these alignments are off. I don't think that's really true. So, based on Passover, which is coming up, evening of, so the week coming up, April the 1st, so at dark, right? The nighttime of April the 1st through Thursday, April 9th. That's Passover coming up. And then if you look at, so it starts here, and that is, Jesus he was put on the cross, hanging on the cross, went into the tomb on a Wednesday. And that's how you get that he was resurrected on Saturday, on the Sabbath. So if Jesus was on the cross here and then put into the tomb, he spent Wednesday night, Thursday night, Friday night, those 3 nights in the tomb. And he arose on the Sabbath, which is from basically dark Friday night until Saturday night. So he arose on the Sabbath at some point on Saturday. And the 5th is kind of irrelevant because it's more of a pagan day. Easter is not really Resurrection Day. Resurrection Day was generally the day before that, or hours before that at least. So those things don't really line up based on what he was saying. And he's equating, the prophecy of Easter, and Easter this year in particular, to the Lord coming back. I don't think that's true. So I'm not saying that something important won't happen. That could be that maybe that date is important for some reason. I have no idea. But I don't think that whatever he says is actually true. Yeah, I have an uneasy feeling about him, Zero says. Yeah. He didn't mention Jesus once. Well, he does. He didn't in the clips that I showed you, but he does actually mention Jesus several times in the full interview over on the one with Sean Ryan. He does mention Jesus. Yeah, so I think he's a believer from what I can tell. I do think it's pretty interesting that he has been known for this prophecy, and I'd never heard of this before, so I didn't know if you guys had or not. But let's take a look at some of your other comments before we call it a night tonight. I do think it's worth taking a look at because I feel like this will come up, as far as this guy's prophecy. In the interview, he mentioned that there was some type of gathering that Chris had, and a bunch of people saw him manifest the orbs, something he can do apparently. Yes, I've heard that, and he has said that. It was either 11,000 or 1,100 people. I don't know on the number, but yes, he's said that he's able to basically command them to appear, and I don't know how that would work. Had encounters with real angels as a child. Wow, interesting. I don't know so many times he didn't even know Abraham. He could be a warlock. I don't have a good feeling about him. He had an orb making machine. I don't know. I don't really have a bad feeling about him, but I don't really know. I just wanted to see what you guys said about him. And beyond that, more about the prophecy. I do find it interesting and figured that it would come up as far as, what could happen this week. And the thing that really got my attention, really, of all of it, was that he predicted in 2012, when the missiles started flying between Israel and Iran, and we're seeing that now. So I think that's kind of interesting. While thing was bogus, can't be prophecy when you can look at stars' position in past and present. Also, God's angels don't destroy your home and family. I'd say he's had way too many mushrooms. Well, ultimately, it didn't actually destroy his family. They are still together, and they made it through everything. And that was the low point, was when, during that video that we watched, the anime one, there were some low points for sure, especially when he had the health problems and the money problems and all these different things. And he's crediting the beings and God for bringing him out of it. And that's what he's got the book about, I guess. UFO of God is what he's calling the book. So I don't necessarily agree with what he's saying. I'm just saying that, to me, it's probably fallen angel related. And certainly there are some demonic elements, because you have the whole terror issue with his son being so afraid, with the dogs, the way they were acting and all that. That is not of God. So wherever he got this prophecy from, whoever this lady is, I don't think it's worth discounting, but you have to wonder, what are her motives? What are her motives? What does she want from humanity? What is this thing that's supposed to be revealed? Is it disclosure? Is it some sort of, disclosure situation with the fallen angel tech and UFOs and stuff like that are going to be, part of the end times scenario here that we're looking at? I don't know. There's no Antichrist on the scene yet. He's been revealed, and yet he's not really in that role yet. So I still think it's a little too early for certain things, but I do think it's interesting, and just wanted to bring it to your attention. Thought this whole thing with the prophecy was also interesting, and I'm going to see if I had anything else on that. I don't think I do. I think we've gone through everything as far as the tabs go. So yeah, I did listen to this interview. It's a short one with Charlie, and I think it's interesting that he was on with him as well. A guy who was recently murdered, and I think the story is compelling. It's interesting that he had so many details, and yet there's still a lot of things that we don't really know. So it will be worth keeping an eye on things and watching and seeing what happens as far as Mr. Bledsoe goes. But yeah, anyway, hopefully you guys got something out of that. I thought it was a pretty interesting story. So if you want to follow what we're doing here on this show, the link tree is probably the best jumping off point. I recently came up with this and figured it would be good to have everything in one spot. So Linktree is where that is, and Linktree/The Diamond Report. And let me find the banner here, and we can post that. And it's also on the Diamond Report. So the Linktree, it's also the QR code in the upper left up there. linktr.ee/The Diamond Report. That's the link tree to get to that page that we're on, but this URL will also take you there, the diamond.report. So either one of those will get you to this jumping off point with all of the various and sundry links to Substack and Subscribestar and the YouTube channels, and the other video channels and things like that. So that's where I'm putting the shows as far as when we're done here, and then take the edited version, upload it to Rumble and BitChute, Brighteon. The audio version goes on Spotify and also on Apple Podcasts. And yeah, pretty much everything else is listed there. And then this is the Substack I've mentioned a few times, so make sure you're on that list. And you will get all the links for everything that I've well, not all the videos for tonight, just because some of them were more custom made. But we'll certainly put some video links for the like the Sean Ryan full interview and all of that. So those will definitely be part of the Substack post. A couple of the videos I had to remove music from and stuff, so that was just to keep the copyrights clean for the live broadcast. Anyways, hopefully you guys enjoyed all of that, and I guess we can wrap it up. We ran a little bit long tonight based on all of that. So blessings to you guys. Hope you have a really great week this week, and don't forget we will be having a broadcast on Easter night, which is April the 5th coming up, 9 p.m. Central. We'll do like we normally do, and as I mentioned at the beginning of the show, it won't be a news show next week. It will be an interview show, and we really don't do interviews on this show very much. I think I've done 2 in all the years I've been doing the show. I interviewed Bart Sabrell and then Clay as well, and that was several years ago now, probably 2021, something like that. So this will be the first interview in a long time, and this is really more just a friendly discussion between myself and Mr. Russ Tanner. So we will do that next week, and he's agreed to come on the show, and we are going to be on video, so you get to see Russ and then ask questions in a live format situation. We'll be taking questions and comments from people, and he'll be able to address things, and we can address things together. So we're going to talk about not only geoengineering, which is what his one of his fortes is, discussing his website, Global Skywatch, globalskywatch.com, if you want to check that out ahead of time. We will be talking about geoengineering some. We'll also be talking about some of his social media struggles, because he's been kicked off of Facebook, and he's got lots of contacts and stuff on Facebook. So we'll be talking about that a little bit as well. But he is also a believer. Russ is a believer in Jesus Christ, and puts his faith in Christ. And we will also be talking about end times things. So you won't want to miss the show next week. I think it'll be a lot of fun, and I'm looking forward to it myself, actually. I think it'll be a nice departure from the weekly news gathering that we do around here. And hopefully we'll have many of you guys here as well to join in on the craziness that I'm sure we'll get into. So anyway, I hope you guys have a blessed week this week, and we will do it again next week. We'll talk to you then. Love you guys, and we'll see you again real soon.